Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Catherine Wells Burr. Catherine Wells Burr was born in 1989 in the United Kingdom to parents Phil and Jane Wells Burr. She has an older sister named Lynn. In the summer of 2010, Catherine met Rafal Novak, a 31-year-old co-worker, on a university break while working on a new vacuum cleaner production line. Rafal was an immigrant from Poland with a previous marriage and a son, had moved to England 4 years earlier seeking a better life. Rafal and Catherine started dating, initially meeting for lunch at the production site cafe, but soon progressing to romantic dinners. Rafal showered Catherine with gifts, took Catherine to movies, and went on walks with Catherine. As their relationship deepened, Rafal shared his past and reasons for moving to the UK with Catherine. Rafal's trustworthy nature allows her to open up completely to him. Within a few months, Catherine introduced Rafal to her parents, who welcomed him into their family and hoped for Rafal and Catherine's future happiness. Soon, Rafal and Catherine began planning their wedding. Catherine graduated with honors from Bath Spa University in 2011 and secured a promising job as a business analyst at Pneumatic International, the manufacturer of Henry vacuum cleaners. Her career progressed quickly, helping her have good job opportunities. Catherine is smart, highly educated, and has good interaction skills with others. She shows genuine interest in her co-workers' problems and cares for those around her. Her kind demeanor and radiant smile have earned her the admiration of her colleagues, who view her as a young leader. Catherine's career was advancing swiftly, and her substantial earnings, combined with those of her partner Rafal, allowed them to purchase a spacious home with a terrace in Willow Way. Although they were financially secure, they opted to take out a mortgage, securing insurance coverage as per their agreement with the bank. With their youth, successful careers, and love for each other, it seemed they had all the ingredients for happiness. However, the fateful day of September 12, 2012, marked a turning point in their lives, changing everything forever. On September 12, 2012, Orlando, a local resident, was driving home after a night shift at the gas station. He is in a hurry to take his daughter Maria to kindergarten as he promised his wife. While driving, he noticed black smoke coming from a nearby parking lot after turning a sharp corner. Smoke billowed from a car engulfed in flames. Orlando stopped and tried to get a closer look but couldn't due to the intense fire. When firefighters arrived 4 minutes later, the car was completely burned out. The police cordoned off the area to keep onlookers away. The location was relatively deserted due to the early hour, and there were no witnesses to the incident. Upon investigation, a charred body was found. The police needed to identify the victim and determine the cause of death. There were no signs of a car accident or any evidence of another vehicle being involved. The police initially suspected that the car may have caught fire due to a malfunction or self-ignition. A thorough investigation was conducted, involving multiple expert analyses. The remains were sent to a forensic laboratory to determine the identity and cause of death. The police also examined fragments of the burned vehicle to identify any malfunctions and establish the cause of the fire. The police began by checking the missing persons database and recent reports of disappearances. They quickly identified the deceased as 23-year-old Catherine Wells Burr. On the same day, Rafal Novak filed a missing persons report for his girlfriend, Catherine. According to Rafal, he left for work at 5:30 a.m. while Catherine was still asleep. When she failed to show up for work, and Rafal couldn't find her at any of her relatives' homes, he contacted the police. The investigation involved interviewing the victim's family, including her parents and sister, as well as Rafal, her colleagues, and friends. By gathering information about the last days and years of Catherine's life, the police were able to reconstruct the events leading up to her tragic death. The investigation into Catherine's disappearance continued to uncover shocking details about her life with Raffel. As the truth began to emerge, it became clear that their relationship had been built on lies from the start. Raffel, a 29-year-old man from Poland, had left his wife and child behind to escape his debts. He moved to the UK, where he met Anna Levick, with whom he had a long-term relationship starting in 2008. When Raffel met Catherine, he initially maintained relationships with both women. However, he eventually chose Catherine, believing she offered more stability and financial security. Catherine, unaware of Raffel's true intentions, genuinely desired a happy marriage and family with him. Meanwhile, Raffel was secretly planning to kill Catherine, intending to use the life insurance payout and the large house they shared to fund a new life with his mistress, Anna. The murder was carefully planned and executed with exceptional cruelty. On the day Catherine went missing, Raffel waited a few hours before reporting her disappearance to her boss, pretending to be frantically worried about her whereabouts. He feigned panic and despair in front of Catherine's colleagues and relatives, claiming she had been receiving threatening letters from a mentally unstable admirer. When Catherine's car was found missing and she was not at her parents' home or her own, Raffel's fake concern led Catherine's family to contact the police. Raffel recounted that the evening before her disappearance had been a normal evening. Raffel and Catherine went for a walk, bought groceries, had dinner, watched TV, and went to bed together. Catherine seemed calm. However, a thorough investigation revealed that her death occurred earlier. She was strangled around 2 a.m., likely in her own bed while asleep. Her body was placed in the car, driven a short distance, and set on fire to destroy evidence. Raffel Novak had a solid alibi, as he was at work from 5:30 a.m. He claimed Catherine was asleep in bed when he left. The burning car was discovered between 6 and 7 a.m. However, Raffel was still at home at 1:30 a.m., which significantly altered the case's direction. As a result, Raffel Novak became the prime suspect in Catherine Welsber's murder. The evidence allowed for Raffel to be detained pending further investigation. Raffel claimed that Catherine was being stalked, which had caused her significant distress. However, during the investigation, it was discovered that Catherine had a secret online life. She had accounts on several adult websites, where she shared intimate photos and engaged in flirtatious conversations with men. A letter from a secret admirer was also found. Despite attempts to mislead the investigation, evidence was uncovered that proved Raffel's direct involvement in Catherine's demise. Notably, Raffel had a motive to kill Catherine. Investigators found that he had been in continuous communication with Anna Legwinowicz, and they had met regularly over the past few months. Furthermore, it was discovered that Raffel had a financial motive. Shortly before Catherine's death, they had both taken out life insurance policies worth £123,000. Raffel and Catherine were the sole beneficiaries of each other's policies, meaning they would receive the payouts in the event of the other's death. The main motive behind Catherine's death and the burning of her car to mislead the investigation was found to be a large life insurance payout. On the day she went missing, Catherine sent a message to Anna's phone. Additionally, security cameras showed Anna and her uncle filling a gas can at a gas station a few days before the crime. This new information brought a third person into the investigation. Anna Legwinovich, 32, and her uncle, Tadeusz Dimitrysyn, 38, along with Raffel Novak, are suspected of being accomplices in a premeditated crime and arson to cover up evidence. The crime was carefully planned by them over several months. They created accounts on adult websites, uploaded doctored images of Catherine, and created chats with various men to mislead the investigation. When faced with undeniable evidence, Raffel and Anna couldn't deny their involvement any longer and began blaming each other. Raffel claimed that Anna, driven by jealousy, planned and carried out the crime to eliminate Catherine. In contrast, Anna accused Raffel of committing the crime out of greed, seeking to secure the insurance payout for the house. To avoid detection, the conspirators forged much evidence related to Catherine. They created fake profiles about Catherine on dating websites, portraying her as a promiscuous and highly sexual woman. Also, to cover their tracks, the conspirators burned Catherine's body and created a fake story about her. They invented a fictitious lover, and they believed that he might be responsible for Catherine's death. One of the conspirators even sent a text message from Catherine's phone to this fictitious person, suggesting that she was on her way to meet him. However, forensic experts discovered that when the fire broke out, Catherine was only wearing her favorite nightgown, not an appropriate outfit to meet someone. Despite the evidence, Raffel refused to acknowledge his involvement in Catherine's death. Instead, he told Jane, Catherine's mother, that her daughter was receiving threatening emails and text messages from an ex-boyfriend who said if he couldn't have her, no one could. Raffel also claimed that Catherine had spoken of taking her own life. In a shocking display of deceit, Raffel allowed Catherine's parents to comfort him, believing he was also mourning the loss of Catherine he loved. Raffel's acting was incredibly convincing. After Catherine's death, her mother, Jane, was so taken in by his performance that she hugged him and allowed him to call her Mom. Jane explained that in the early stages of the investigation, the police viewed Raffel more as a witness than a suspect, so she decided to offer him her full support. Her reasoning was that if Catherine had loved him that much and he was considered part of their family, then he deserved their support. The trial, chaired by Justice Sharp, began and the jury heard that Raffel and his two co-defendants stood to gain a significant amount from Catherine's death. They hoped to receive a life insurance payout of £123,000 and half ownership of a two-bedroom home in Mangold, Somerset, valued at £137,000. During the trial, it was revealed that when police found Catherine's body in her burned car on the morning of September 12, Raffel showed no emotion. Anna Legwinowicz frequently shook her head and laughed in court when it was suggested she was responsible for the crime, but refused to testify. Tadevs also chose not to testify in his defense. The judge, Justice Sharp, told the defendants the murder was a horrific and merciless crime. The defendants showed no emotion during sentencing. The judge described Anna Legwinowicz's behavior as deceitful, manipulative, and cruel, and stated she played a significant role in the crime. He also told Tadevs that the murder was committed for gain, with many aggravating circumstances and no mitigating ones. The judge expressed deep sympathy for Catherine's parents, who had no idea that Raffel Novak's charming facade hid a monster. Raffel's actions were driven by financial gain, as he had no emotional ties to Catherine. Catherine's mother stated that the brutal and calculated manner of her daughter's death would haunt them forever. She regretted not having the chance to say goodbye or express her love, and now considers Raffel an evil person who deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. Catherine's father, Philip, added that they had welcomed Raffel into their home, treating him like a son, only to be betrayed by him. During the trial, Raffel Novak became emotional in the witness box. He denied any involvement in the death of his girlfriend, Catherine Wells Burr. Raffel claimed everyone was blaming him for a crime he did not commit. However, the court heard that Raffel showed no emotion when the police discovered Catherine's body in her burned-out car on September 12 last year. Catherine's mother, Jane Wells Burr, testified that after his initial release from police custody, Raffel asked for a steak dinner and didn't even mention Catherine. Jane Wells Burr stated that her daughter's fate was sealed when she and Raffel bought a house together and took out a life insurance policy. She believes that in signing the contract, Catherine also signed her own death warrant. Ultimately, the court found Raffel Novak guilty of suffocating Catherine with a pillow while she slept. He had conspired with his secret lover, Anna Legwinowicz, and her uncle, Tadevs, to claim a £123,000 life insurance payout and a share of the house. Anna and Tadevs had transported Catherine's body in her car to a remote location and set it on fire. Rafael and Anna were sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 32 years, while Tadevs received a 27-year sentence. After the verdict, Catherine's parents, Philip and Jane Wells Burr, advocated for stricter immigration laws. They believed that if the UK had more stringent immigration rules, like the US, Rafael Novak would not have been allowed entry. Rafael had previously been convicted of assaulting his wife in Poland. Philip and Jane, who divorced after Catherine's death, blamed the European Union for the UK's lenient immigration policies. Jane stated that the UK does not thoroughly check people entering the country. She was unaware of Rafael's previous assault charge in Poland and believes the government needs to prevent individuals like Rafael from freely entering the country. Following the verdict, Catherine's mother paid tribute to her daughter, describing her as a beautiful, determined, and hard-working individual who earned a first-class degree from the University of Bath Spa. Catherine's family expressed their devastation and loss, stating they were proud of her accomplishments and had no idea how to move forward without her. They believed she had great potential and a promising life ahead, but it was cruelly taken away from her and her loved ones. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kaler family. James Craig Kaler was born in 1963 in Weatherford, Texas. Karen Kaler White, his future wife, was born in the same city 2 years later, in 1965. They met while attending a Texas university in the early 1980s. At the time, Craig was a graduating engineering student, and Karen was a freshman studying humanities. They quickly discovered common interests and started a romantic relationship. Young and in love, they appeared to be the ideal couple, with Craig standing out as a top student due to his exceptional determination and engineering talent. After graduating in the late 1980s, they had a modest wedding with only close friends and family in attendance. They welcomed their first child, Emily, in 1991, and their second child, Lauren, in 1993. The family lived in a cozy house in Weatherford and enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle by local standards. In 1999, while Karen was pregnant with their third child, Craig received a lucrative job offer from a large utility company in Weatherford. His promotion coincided with the birth of their son, Sean, whom he cherished. Craig purchased a large house in a highly respected neighborhood in the city, along with a dependable car for his family. He became the main provider for the family, while Karen stayed at home. On the surface, the family appeared to be flawless. Their daughters, Emily and Lauren, were gifted in sports and music, frequently taking part in singing competitions and local activities. Emily was an outstanding student who went on to attend the prestigious Pharmacy College, whereas Lauren, also an excellent student, aspired to enroll in a conservatory to pursue a music career. Their son, Sean, was a friendly, curious boy with a passion for mathematics and a dream of becoming an archaeologist. He had a close relationship with his parents and sisters. Craig supported the family financially, while Karen ensured the home was welcoming, took care of the children, and enjoyed baking. They was actively involved in community work, aiming to enhance their neighborhood, and had raised 3 gifted and wonderful children. However, despite their seemingly perfect life, the family was hiding numerous issues. In 2007, Karen confided in her younger sister, Linda, revealing that she was on the brink of a nervous breakdown. Karen expressed her distress over Craig's controlling behavior, which had been ongoing for years and was escalating. Craig insisted on a detailed record of every single expense, no matter how small, including daily household costs. Karen had to provide him with receipts from the supermarket, bank statements, and even report her daily activities while he was at work. The entire family was bound to a strict schedule set by Craig, dictating when they had to be home, sleep, wake up, eat, and even when they could be intimate. As time passed, Craig's need for control grew stronger. He became increasingly demanding and selfish, scheduling Karen's every move down to the hour. Karen felt trapped, with no personal time, only duties and responsibilities. She tried to meet all of Craig's demands, hoping he would eventually ease up and they could return to their previous life. However, Craig seemed to take pleasure in his control and showed no willingness to change. Linda was deeply disturbed by what her sister shared, having, like everyone else, perceived Craig as the ideal husband and family man, only to discover he was a tyrant at home. Despite this, Karen didn't want to break up her family and was financially dependent on Craig, along with their children. So, she decided to look for a job that could provide a stable income. Karen, a mother of 3, had maintained a remarkable physical shape despite her advanced age. She prioritized good nutrition, occasional dieting, self-care, and daily jogging. Unbeknownst to her husband Craig, Karen joined a local fitness club, where she spent several hours each day working out. This newfound hobby allowed her to relieve stress, find distraction, and clarify her thoughts. As Craig was at work, he remained unaware of her fitness routine. The fitness club management soon took notice of Karen, an attractive, fit, and dedicated individual. They offered her a trial opportunity to become a fitness instructor with the potential for a formal employment contract. Karen, a former stay-at-home wife, was thrilled by this unexpected chance to turn her passion into a paid career. When Craig eventually discovered Karen's secret, she anticipated a negative reaction, guessing him to prohibit her from continuing. However, he responded calmly and seemed pleased that his wife had found a fulfilling activity that also earned her an income. Karen's husband had 3 conditions for their new arrangement. She had to be home when he arrived, cook meals, and maintain their intimate life. Karen agreed, as this gave her the freedom to manage her daily life and finances without needing to justify every expense to her husband. At the fitness club where she worked, Karen met Sunny Reese, a new instructor. They quickly became friends, and for Karen, who had been a stay-at-home mom for years, Sunny became a trusted confidant. As their friendship grew, Karen and Sunny spent more time together, going for walks, drinking coffee, and having in-depth conversations. Their friendship eventually evolved into something more, but they kept their relationship a secret. Karen knew she had to confess to her husband but struggled to find the right words and worried about the consequences. After months of preparation, she finally opened up to Craig. Although Craig was initially perplexed by his wife's confession, he remained calm and composed. The next day, he revealed that he was open to his wife's relationship with Sunny, but only if he could be a part of it. This proposal left Karen stunned and unsure of how to respond. Craig, however, took the lead and started wooing Sunny, showering her with flowers and small gifts. To him, this seemed like a chance to spice up his intimate life and bring passion back into his marriage to Karen. Initially, the 2 women agreed to Craig's proposal, but it didn't take long for them to realize that he was trying to assert his dominance. Their unusual love triangle was short-lived, and Craig was eventually told that he was no longer welcome in their relationship. Feeling offended, Craig ordered Karen to end the affair immediately, but she continued to see Sunny, having genuinely fallen in love. After nearly 2 decades of marriage, it appeared that Karen was willing to leave her husband for a new relationship. Craig relocated his family to Columbia, Missouri. He became the water director, hoping the move would end his wife's affair with Sunny and restore normal family life. The 2008 move proved challenging. The children adapted to new schools and made friends, while Craig thought he'd severed ties between Karen and Sunny. However, Karen and Sunny continued to secretly communicate through phone calls, texts, and meetings. Karen and Sunny would meet halfway at a roadside hotel, spending a couple of hours together before returning home. By this time, Karen was aware her marriage was failing. She no longer loved her husband, and it was only a matter of time before they divorced. These secret meetings continued until December 2008. On New Year's Eve, the Kaler family visited their hometown to see family and friends. Sonny was also at the party. Initially, Karen and Sonny kept a low profile, just exchanging greetings. However, as the party went on and they drank more, they became less concerned about what others thought. They were inseparable, holding hands, exchanging romantic glances, and were even seen kissing by some guests. Craig was furious, feeling insulted and humiliated by Karen's public display of her affair in front of dozens of friends, former roommates, and co-workers. He verbally attacked Karen and Sonny at the party, then forcibly dragged Karen away. On the way home, Craig lost control, grabbing Karen by the shoulders and shaking her violently, ripping her dress. He then slapped her, causing her to stumble and fall, hitting her head hard. Harassment continued after they returned home, and the conflict didn't subside. Karen told Craig a few days later that she was leaving him and started divorce proceedings, asking for custody of the children. Initially, Craig apologized and begged her to stay for the children's sake, suggesting they give their marriage another try. However, Karen was resolute and got a divorce. Craig then called their mutual friends and relatives, asking them to persuade Karen to stay with him and not break up the family. She informed him that she was ending their marriage to be with Sonny, admitting that she had never found true happiness with him. In early spring 2009, Craig and Karen got into another argument while still living together. This time, Craig became physically violent, prompting Karen to report him to the police, resulting in his arrest. However, Craig downplayed the incident at the police station, claiming he only restrained Karen to calm her down, which caused her bruises. Following this incident, Karen took the children and moved out without waiting for their divorce to be finalized. Craig was devastated and angry, especially when he found out his daughters, Emily and Lauren, sided with their mother, saying they had finally seen her happy after a long time. Craig felt betrayed and refused to communicate with his daughters, only spending time with his son Sean on weekends. Meanwhile, Craig held on to the hope that Karen would change her mind and return to him. His jealousy led him to try to control her, following her everywhere, watching her house, and even attempting to install a hidden camera. His obsessive behavior negatively impacted his job performance, resulting in him eventually missing work without a valid reason, which ultimately led to him being fired. After losing his job and income, Craig was forced to move in with his parents. With plenty of free time, he began stalking his ex-wife, Karen. In November 2009, just before Thanksgiving, Karen took her children to visit her 89-year-old grandmother, Dorothy White, in the small town of Burlingame, Kansas. On the evening of November 29th, the Burlingame Police Department received a call about a suspicious van and gunshots. Dorothy's neighbors reported seeing a small truck pull up to her house, and a man got out and entered the house. They heard screams and gunshots, but didn't intervene, fearing the man was armed. The man quickly left the house and drove away. When police arrived, they found a terrified 10-year-old boy, Sean Kaler, calling for help. He couldn't explain what happened, but police soon discovered a horrific scene. Inside the house, near the front door, they found Dorothy lying in a pool of blood, surprisingly alive despite 2 gunshot wounds. In the kitchen, police discovered 44-year-old Karen's body. She had been shot in the chest and then fatally shot in the head at close range by her ex-husband, leaving her no chance of survival. Nearby, between a wall and a couch, lay the body of Karen's 18-year-old daughter, Emily. Emily had attempted to hide from her enraged father but was found and killed with 2 point-blank shots. Upstairs, in a second-floor bedroom, Emily's younger sister Lauren was found in a pool of blood, still alive. Lauren fatally begged for her life, repeatedly stating that her father was responsible for the attack. Lauren and her great-grandmother were immediately rushed to the intensive care unit of a nearby hospital. Unfortunately, despite medical efforts, neither survived. Lauren died on December 1st due to massive blood loss and internal organ damage, while her great-grandmother passed away a few hours later. The only person who survived, Sean, was in shock. Psychologists helped him deal with the trauma he experienced, and since he was the only one who saw what happened at his great-grandmother's house, he needed to be questioned carefully. That evening, Sean's mother was preparing dinner in the kitchen when he approached her to ask for his favorite pies. Suddenly, the back door swung open and his father, Craig, entered with a shotgun. Without a word, Craig pointed the gun at his ex-wife and shot her, then fired again at closer range. Sean was initially frozen in horror, but when his father turned to him and stared silently, he realized he had to escape. He jumped out the open back door and ran towards the main entrance, hoping to alert his grandmother, sisters, and get help. However, upon reaching the threshold, Sean heard more gunshots and, fearing for his safety, hid in a nearby outbuilding. He heard additional shots and waited in terror. Craig was immediately added to the wanted list, with a warning that he was armed and extremely dangerous. The police received reports of a speeding truck, which helped them quickly determine the direction Craig was heading. At one point, Craig abandoned his vehicle in a wooded area and began walking down a deserted road. Law enforcement caught up with Craig the next morning and arrested him without resistance. In the vehicle, they found a rifle, ammunition, and medication for depression and anxiety next to the driver's seat. Craig appeared confused and frightened, admitting to being armed but stating he had no intention of using the weapons. At the police station, Craig initially confessed to his crimes and openly shared his story with the investigating officer. He explained how his wife's infidelity with Sonny and their public humiliation of him had led to his downward spiral. He shared how his efforts to save his marriage resulted in job loss and further erosion of his self-respect. Overcome with emotion, Craig expressed regret and a sense of betrayal by those closest to him, including his daughters. Craig's trial started in December 2010. His lawyer, Thomas Heaney, advised him to recant his initial confession and blame his actions on mental illness and insanity. This was Craig's only way to avoid the death penalty for the murder of 4 people. Heaney argued that Craig's mental state was severely impacted after his wife left him for someone else, his children sided with their mother, he lost his job, and had to move back into his parents' home. According to Heaney, these factors led to Craig's breakdown, causing him to commit the crime while insane and unaware of his actions. However, prior to 1995, a law in Kansas allowed for leniency if a defendant pleaded insanity, but this law was repealed. The prosecution found no evidence of insanity in Craig's actions, only deliberate planning. Craig bought guns and ammunition beforehand, went to the house where his family was, shot each victim twice to ensure no chance of survival, but intentionally let his son Sean escape. In August 2011, Craig was convicted of all charges and received a death sentence. At the final hearing, 12-year-old Sean testified, stating he didn't want his father to die because he was his only remaining close relative. Despite numerous appeals, the verdict remained unchanged. Today, Mr. Kaler is still imprisoned, fighting to have his case reviewed and the death sentence overturned. Following the death of his mother and sisters, Sean is now an adult, having completed his education, and has chosen to stay and work in his home state. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Sierra Jugan. Sierra Jugan was a bright and cheerful young woman who spread joy and laughter wherever she went. Her adventurous nature and ability to find humor in any situation made her a delight to be around, even when she made mistakes. As she entered high school, Sierra's confidence and enthusiasm only grew. She fearlessly tried out new experiences, including volleyball, and showed remarkable poise both on and off the court. After returning from a family vacation on July 19, 2016, Sierra was excited to start the new semester at the University of Toledo, where she had plans to study abroad. She had recently bought a new bike and was eager to take it for a spin. Her mom wanted to discuss her study abroad plans with her, but Sierra decided to visit her boyfriend Josh's house, which was 7.12 miles away beforehand. Sierra left her house in high spirits, wearing shorts and a tank top, and promised her mom she would be back by 10:05 p.m. However, when Josh tried to reach her later, her phone went straight to voicemail. Alarmed, Josh called Sierra's mom, who immediately sensed that something was wrong. Sierra's family, including her aunt and Josh, mounted a search effort to locate her after she went missing. They thoroughly searched the neighborhood, suspecting she might have been involved in an accident. Despite their efforts, they didn't find any clues or signs of Sierra's whereabouts. As time passed, Sierra's family became increasingly worried. Her mom eventually contacted the police, who arrived about an hour later. A concerned neighbor informed the family that County Road 6 was blocked off, and they rushed to the scene. There, they found a chaotic atmosphere and officers who wouldn't allow them to pass. The officers weren't able to provide any information, leaving Sierra's family in a state of panic. In desperation, they decided to seek help from the FBI. As the night wore on, Sierra's family was left to wonder what had happened to their daughter, unable to rest due to their growing concern. The next day, Sierra's mom and aunt started searching for her by calling hospitals, looking for any unidentified females. Although they didn't find anything, they got a promising lead from Detroit, Michigan. A young woman who looked a lot like Sierra was in the hospital after escaping from a moving vehicle with serious injuries. To confirm her identity, a nurse asked Sierra's family to describe any distinctive marks on her body. Sierra's mom mentioned a scar on her calf and her pierced belly button. The woman in the hospital seemed to match Sierra's description, giving the family hope that they had finally found her. However, their hopes were soon dashed when they discovered that the woman in the hospital was not Sierra after all. The family was devastated to learn that the person found wasn't Sierra, as they had pinned their hopes on it being her. Later that morning, police officers came to Sierra's house to update them on the previous night's events. One of the officers had discovered a disturbed cornfield near the area while parking his car. He noticed signs of a struggle inside the cornfield and found a motorcycle track. To avoid contaminating potential evidence, he retreated without touching anything. As he retreated, he caught a glimpse of something shiny that turned out to be Sierra's purple bike. Further investigation revealed several items at the scene, including male and female sunglasses, a bloody sock, and a screwdriver. Based on these findings, the police believed that Sierra had likely been abducted from that location. Detectives investigating Sierra's disappearance interviewed her friends and family to learn more about her boyfriend, Josh. They found out that Sierra and Josh had been close friends since childhood, starting from when they were just 7 years old. As they grew older, their friendship turned into a romantic relationship in their first year of high school, and they became known for being a happy and adventurous couple. Skiing was one of their shared hobbies, and they would often go skiing together. After high school, Sierra went to the University of Toledo, while Josh attended Bowling Green. Despite the physical distance between them, they remained committed to each other and would often talk about getting married someday. However, Sierra wanted to focus on her education before settling down, showing how dedicated she was to her studies. Despite the challenges of being apart, their relationship remained strong and serious. On July 19th, detectives learned that Sierra had visited Josh's house in the early afternoon. She left his house around 6:30 p.m. to return home, and Josh, concerned for her safety, accompanied her on his motorcycle for part of the way. However, after a few miles, Sierra insisted that Josh turn around and let her ride her bike the rest of the way home alone. Josh reluctantly agreed, and they parted ways. Josh headed back on his motorcycle, while Sierra continued riding her bike. During the investigation into Sierra's disappearance, detectives found motorcycle tracks in the cornstalks near Sierra's bike. This discovery raised a key question. Did these tracks come from Josh's motorcycle? The detectives couldn't ignore this potential connection and began investigating further to see if they could link Josh to the scene of Sierra's disappearance. They set up a command post to gather and analyze any relevant clues. A promising lead emerged quickly. A local resident came forward, saying he had found a motorcycle helmet on the side of the road on July 14th while driving. He picked it up and stored it in his truck. After learning about Sierra's disappearance, he examined the helmet more closely and discovered red stains that appeared to be blood. The helmet was found in the same general area where Sierra's bike was discovered in the cornfield. The detectives asked Josh about his motorcycle helmet, and to their relief, he produced it, confirming he had it with him. They also verified his alibi by speaking with his parents, like ruling him out as a suspect. Although visibly shaken, Sierra's family never considered Josh responsible for her disappearance. The detectives were determined to identify the owner of the blood-stained helmet, recognizing the significance of DNA evidence. They sent the helmet to the crime lab for testing, anticipating a potential breakthrough. The detectives waited patiently for the results, hoping it would lead them closer to solving the case. The news of Sierra's disappearance spread quickly throughout the town, prompting the community to come together to search for her. Citizens joined forces, organizing search parties that scoured every possible area, searching for any clue that could lead to her whereabouts. As the townspeople worked tirelessly to bring Sierra home safely, they felt a strong sense of unity. To show their support, the community organized a candlelight vigil at the local high school. The atmosphere was emotional, filled with grief, hope, and determination. Hundreds of people gathered, holding candles and sending their thoughts and prayers for Sierra's safe return. After 2 days of investigation, the police received a tip about a suspicious van seen speeding through the area. They suspected that Sierra might have been taken in the van, possibly falling victim to sex trafficking. The police received a tip about a license plate number linked to a van that was speeding through the area where Sierra went missing. They interviewed the van's owner, who explained that he had sped up because another vehicle had suddenly approached from behind, possibly a family member searching for Sierra. This had startled him, causing him to quickly leave the area, which may have given the impression that he was involved in Sierra's disappearance. After 48 hours of investigation, the police had no leads on Sierra's whereabouts. As each day passed, her family's hopes of finding her alive were dwindling. The police continued their door-to-door search, which eventually led them to a nearby farm that belonged to James Worley. The farm had several structures, including a house, a trailer, and a large barn. The police questioned James Worley about the day Sierra disappeared, hoping to get any information that could help them find her. To the detectives' surprise, James revealed that he had been riding his motorcycle on the day Sierra went missing. However, he claimed that his bike had broken down, causing him to lose some items, including a screwdriver and his helmet. The detectives were stunned, as these were the same items found at the scene of Sierra's abduction. This revelation raised significant suspicions about James. The detectives were determined to investigate further and questioned James about Sierra's disappearance. They noticed scratches on his face, indicating that he had been involved in a struggle. This discovery only increased their suspicions and raised more questions. They wondered if the scratches were the result of a confrontation with Sierra. The detectives decided to investigate James's background, hoping to uncover relevant information. What they discovered sent chills down their spines. James had a dark criminal history, including a previous attempt to abduct a 26-year-old woman named Robin Garder on July 4, 1989. On that day, Robin was getting ready for a neighborhood picnic when she decided to go for a bike ride. As she rode, she became thirsty and contemplated returning home. However, before she could make that decision, a car approached from behind and collided with her bike. The impact sent Robin flying into a nearby ditch. The driver, who later turned out to be James, approached Robin and asked if she was okay. However, he soon revealed sinister intentions, striking her in the back of the head and threatening her life with a screwdriver. He forced her into his car, attempting to handcuff her. Robin resisted fiercely, preventing him from securing the second cuff. Despite being on the verge of losing consciousness, Robin continued to fight. She screamed for help, but her cries were drowned out by the desolate cornfields. Just as she was about to give up, she heard a motorcycle approaching. The rider noticed her distress and stopped to help. Robin escaped by climbing onto the back of the motorcycle, leaving her captor behind. The motorcyclist drove Robin home, where she collapsed. Her mother called the police and an ambulance, and Robin was rushed to the hospital. The motorcyclist then led the police back to the scene, where they found James still present with his car. James cooperated fully, providing identification, but his account of the events differed significantly from the truth. He denied any intention of abducting Robin, but the detectives were not convinced. James Worley claimed that he had to restrain Robin with handcuffs after a bike accident to prevent her from harming herself, not to harm her. He said he was concerned about her well-being and wanted to get her help. However, James had a dark past. In 1989, he was arrested for trying to kidnap Robin and was found guilty, receiving a 6 to 10-year sentence. Due to good behavior, he was released after 3 years. When Robin learned of his release, she was terrified, fearing he might harm her again. The police had reason to suspect James in Sierra's disappearance, given his criminal history. They obtained a search warrant for his residence, which he shared with his mother. Initially, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but upon inspecting his expansive backyard, they found a suspicious barn. Inside the barn, they discovered a small green crate containing labeled and sealed bags of women's clothing, including a pair of bloody purple panties. The detectives also found a hidden freezer, air mattress with stains, zip ties, duct tape, and handcuffs. James claimed the items were for a porn business, but the evidence suggested otherwise. The police collected all the items for DNA testing, and the evidence led to James's arrest for Sierra's murder. The investigation continued, with the police searching every inch of James's property, including a pond, which they drained to search for evidence. The question on everyone's mind was, where was Sierra's body? The detectives expanded their investigation to the attic's front insulation and neighboring properties, recognizing that evidence might have been dispersed beyond James's property. They thoroughly explored all leads. A farmer reported a suspicious area in his field where the corn seemed matted down, with a nearby mound of dirt that resembled a potential grave. The farmer's concerns were heightened due to the ongoing search for Sierra, so he quickly contacted the police. The police responded promptly, noticing a fresh pile of dirt that fueled their suspicions. They carefully processed the area, avoiding potential evidence disturbance. Despite their thorough search, no clues were found regarding Sierra's whereabouts. The detectives then searched adjacent farms using drones and helicopters to cover more ground. They soon discovered a mound of dirt with freshly matted corn, with trained dogs indicating a potential crime scene. As they dug, they made a grim discovery: human remains, later confirmed to be Sierra's body. Tragically, her hands were bound behind her back, and her feet were tied to handcuffs. An object was lodged in her mouth, restricting her airway, which ultimately led to her death. The devastating news was delivered to the Sierra family that night. The family was overwhelmed with grief, and their sorrow was palpable. 1 month after the abduction and murder, James Worley was indicted on 19 counts, including kidnapping and aggravated murder. 2 years later, Worley stood trial, pleading not guilty despite overwhelming evidence. The state presented a terrifying story over 8 intense days, and the jury deliberated for 6 hours before finding Worley guilty on all counts related to Sierra's murder. The sentence imposed was death. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Chris Coleman. Chris Coleman, a former Marine, met his wife Sherry, an Air Force member, while serving in the military. Sherry instantly fell in love with Chris and knew he was the one. They got married before their first child, Garrett, was born, as they were devout Christians. After Garrett's birth, they had their second son, Gavin. Gavin was more energetic and mischievous, unlike his laid-back father and brother. Chris and Sherry were devoted parents who cherished their children. Sherry protected them fiercely, while Chris enjoyed every moment with them. When Chris left the military, the family moved to Waterloo, Illinois, where Chris worked as the head of security for TV evangelist Joyce Meyer. Joyce's luxurious lifestyle sparked controversy, with critics accusing her of exploiting her followers' fears. Chris's job was to protect Joyce from threatening letters and hate mail. He worked as her bodyguard and earned a substantial salary, providing financial security for his family. However, his frequent travels with Joyce put a strain on his family, as he was away from home for long periods. His sons deeply missed him, and his wife Sherry felt overwhelmed, underappreciated, and burdened with household responsibilities. In October 2008, Chris went to Florida, where his wife grew up, and met with an old friend, Tara Lintz, who gave him a tour of the city. Days later, Chris received a disturbing email from an address called Destroy Chris, warning him that he and his family would be in danger if he continued to work for Joyce Meyer. The ministry received more threatening emails, specifying a time and date for the potential attack on Chris's family. The emails seemed to have inside information on Chris's schedule, including his upcoming trip abroad. Chris told Sherry about the threatening emails he had been receiving, and on the following Monday, he reported them to the local police. As Chris often worked away from home with Joyce Meyer Ministries, the police offered to increase patrols around their house during his absences. But this did little to alleviate Sherry's fear for her family's safety. Sherry's concern was so great that she once asked a friend to stay with her while Chris was away, as she didn't feel comfortable being alone in the house. She emphasized that she would do whatever it took to keep her family safe. 2 months into the threats, the Colemans received a disturbing, hand-delivered letter demanding that Chris publicly renounce his faith or face severe consequences. The letter's ominous tone left Sherry genuinely fearful for her family's safety. The threat had a profound impact on Sherry, and her fear grew daily. To respond to the threat, Chris and Sherry took extra precautions to protect their family, including installing surveillance cameras around their home, which captured footage of the surrounding area and sent it to a screen in their basement office. Chris hoped the cameras would help identify the person behind the threats. After the cameras were installed, the threats suddenly stopped and life returned to normal for the family. For a few months, everything seemed fine. However, in April 2009, the family received another disturbing letter warning that Sherry's worst fears were about to come true. Chris was deeply disturbed by the letter's ominous tone. After reviewing the security footage, Chris was shocked to see a mysterious silhouette. Although the figure's identity remained unknown, its presence reignited Chris's concerns for his family's safety. The renewed sense of fear led to increased police efforts to protect the Coleman family. Detective Sergeant Justin Barlow from the Columbia Police Department took a particular interest in the case and offered to help the family. He set up video cameras to monitor the Coleman's driveway, but unfortunately, they did not catch the person behind the threats. On May 5, 2009, Chris went to the gym and then called his home phone to check on Sherry and the boys, making sure they were up and getting ready for school. Chris called for help, but no one responded. Concerned, he phoned his neighbor, Detective Justin Barlow, at 6:45 a.m. Chris told Barlow that he had left for the gym in St. Louis County around 5:30 a.m. and had been trying to reach his wife Sherry, but she wasn't answering her phone. Worried, Chris asked Barlow to check on Sherry and their sons. Barlow grabbed his gear, including his weapon, handcuffs, flashlight, and radio, and headed to the Coleman house. As he waited for backup to arrive, his priority was to make contact with Sherry and ensure everyone's safety. With a mix of hope and unease, Barlow approached the door and knocked firmly, hoping someone would respond. When Detective Justin Barlow arrived at the Coleman home, the eerie silence and darkness made him feel uneasy. The lack of movement and lights inside the house heightened his sense of unease. Minutes later, a patrol vehicle arrived with another officer to assist him. The second officer went to the back of the house to try to see or communicate with Sherry or the boys through a window or door. Instead, he found signs of forced entry into the basement, which immediately grabbed Detective Barlow's attention. He became deeply concerned for Sherry Garrett and Gavin's safety. Detective Barlow and the second officer decided to enter the house through the basement, announcing their presence as they went. But they received no response. During their thorough search of the basement, they found a disconnected video cable at the computer desk. This discovery led them to believe that the camera's digital video recorder was missing. Detective Justin Barlow and the second officer searched the Coleman home from the basement up, noticing a strong smell of aerosol spray paint that grew stronger as they climbed the stairs. On the main level, they found the walls painted with derogatory messages targeting Chris, Sherry, and their sons. 13 minutes after Chris called the detective, Chris returned home from the gym and was told to wait outside while the officers searched the house. He complied, sitting quietly on the porch without asking questions or trying to enter. Meanwhile, a third officer arrived, and the three of them searched the rest of the house for Sherry and the boys. On the upper floors, they found more hate-filled spray-painted messages. When they reached the second story, Detective Barlow entered the bedroom of Garrett, the oldest son, where he appeared to be asleep. However, upon closer inspection, the detective realized that Garrett was dead, with no signs of life and a cold body. Ligature marks around his neck indicated that he had been murdered. Detectives' minds were shocked when they found Garrett's lifeless body. Next door, the second officer entered to check on Gavin and was horrified to discover the boy was also dead, strangled with ligature marks around his neck, just like his brother. The gruesome scene was made even more disturbing by an obscene message spray-painted on the bedsheets. In the master bedroom, the third officer found Sherry's lifeless body on the bed, her hair covering her face. It was clear she had been murdered. As the officer examined the room, he noticed Sherry's body had several bruises, indicating she had fought back and tried to defend herself and her sons. After discovering the bodies of Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin, detectives, including Justin Barlow, heard Chris enter the house, having waited outside for news about his family. Detective Barlow took Chris outside to give him some privacy to process the news. However, as the reality of the situation sank in, Chris's reaction was intense. He felt sick, collapsed, and curled up into a fetal position, unable to contain his emotions. The shock of the brutal murders was too much for him to comprehend. Chris was in disbelief that his family had been taken away in such a violent manner. In desperation, he tried to reach out to his father, Ronald, telling him that something had happened to Sherry and the boys. Ronald immediately realized that Chris was in shock upon receiving the news. Ronald was stunned by the tragedy that had befallen his family. The shocking news of the murders of Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin spread quickly throughout the community of Waterloo, Illinois, where the Coleman family lived. As the neighbors learned of the tragedy, they were left devastated and terrified. Chris expressed remorse for leaving his family alone to go to the gym, but when asked if he had any idea who might have committed the crime, he claimed to have no clue. Nevertheless, Detective Barlow noticed several suspicious behaviors during the interview. One red flag was Chris's lack of curiosity about the details of his family's murder, which seemed unusual given the gravity of the situation. The detective noticed Chris trying to hide scratches on his arms during the interview, even using a blanket to conceal them despite the warm temperature. The scratches were suspicious because they suggested Chris had been in a physical struggle, similar to Sherry's fight with her killer. When asked about the scratches, Chris claimed they came from installing a satellite dish the day before. He denied having an affair during the police interview, but did admit to a close friendship with Tara, a cocktail waitress and high school friend of his wife's who lived in Florida. Chris said his conversations with Tara were innocent, but wouldn't have been approved by his wife. He insisted he would never consider leaving his family for Tara. However, when detectives contacted Tara, her story contradicted Chris's. She revealed that they had been having an affair since November 2008. Tara provided evidence from her phone and laptop, including emails, explicit pictures, and videos that exposed the true nature of their relationship. When detectives confronted Chris with the information Tara had provided, he admitted to seeing her more frequently than he initially told them. Further investigation revealed that Chris and Tara had a secret arrangement to meet at locations where Chris worked for Joyce Meyer. They would sneak away together, often to exotic destinations like Hawaii, to spend time together without their family's knowledge. Although Chris claimed that his relationship with Tara was not an affair, detectives found evidence on Tara's phone and computer that suggested otherwise. Tara had marked a wedding to Chris on her calendar, as well as planned vacations with him, indicating that she believed Chris intended to leave his family for her. The detectives were suspicious of Chris because the evidence contradicted his claim that his relationship with Tara was casual. Chris's father, Ronald, was shocked to learn about the affair, but he firmly believed that it was unrelated to the murders of Chris's wife and son. According to Ronald, Chris was a gentle person who was not capable of such brutal crimes. Ronald described Chris as a quiet individual who showed no signs of violence. However, the detectives thought that Chris's affair with Tara was a strong motive for the murders. Despite this, their initial investigation did not find enough evidence to charge Chris with the crime. After being questioned for 6 hours, Chris was released without being charged. Tara became a person of interest in the investigation, but she was eventually cleared as a suspect when it was discovered that she was in Florida on the morning of May 5, 2009, when the murders occurred. The Coleman family murders led to one of the largest murder investigations in Illinois history. A special team of 25 detectives was formed to catch the person who killed the Coleman family. They worked extremely long hours, often 20 hours a day, for 15 days straight, calling in experts to help with the case. One of their main goals was to find out who sent the hateful emails to Chris Coleman. They carefully looked at every threatening email sent to Joyce Meyer Ministries over the past year, which led them to investigate leads all over the country. The team tracked down and talked to every person who sent threatening emails, but none of them seemed to be responsible for the murder. A team of computer experts was then brought in to help investigate the crime. The detectives hoped they could find some digital evidence related to the murder. The computer experts started by looking at the email account Diris. They found that the email address was created on November 14, 2008, just a few days before the first threatening email was sent. One surprising thing they discovered was that the death threats sent to Chris Coleman's family came from Chris's own computer IP address. The detectives thoroughly examined the spray-painted messages at the crime scene and compared them to Christopher Coleman's handwriting to gather evidence. They took photos of the messages and collected handwriting samples from Coleman, which were then sent to a specialist for analysis. The expert's comparison of the two samples revealed a match, indicating that Christopher Coleman had written the messages on his home's walls on the day of the murders. Further analysis identified the specific brand and color of spray paint used, Rust-Oleum Candy Apple Red. After learning that Chris Coleman had bought something from a hardware store just days before his family's murder, a detective contacted the store's manager. The manager confirmed the purchase and revealed that Chris had bought Rust-Oleum Candy Apple Red spray paint, the same type found at the crime scene. This discovery was crucial because it established a link between Chris and the murder. The timeline of the murder was also important. Chris initially claimed to have left his house around 5:45 a.m. on May 5, 2009, but the medical examiner determined that the murders occurred around 3 a.m., which meant Chris was at home when his family was killed. 2 weeks after the bodies were found, Chris Coleman was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. The prosecution argued that Chris's motivations were greed, selfishness, and narcissism, and that he wanted a fresh start, but his family was standing in the way. In April 2011, Chris Coleman stood trial for the murders of his wife, Sherry, and their 2 sons, Garrett and Gavin. The prosecution argued that Chris killed his family to be with another woman, Tara, as he would lose his well-paying job with Joyce Meyer Ministries if he divorced Sherry, since the organization does not condone divorce. Chris's defense attorney claimed that an intruder entered the Colemans' home on May 5, 2009, and committed the murders. However, 2 years later, on the anniversary of the murders, Chris was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without parole, despite being eligible for a death sentence. The judge's decision was influenced by the recent repeal of the death penalty in Illinois, which would take effect a few months later. Sherry's loved ones wanted to keep her, Garrett, and Gavin's memory alive and decided to raise funds for victims of domestic violence, a cause close to their hearts. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Elizabeth Smart. On June 5, 2002, 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart was sleeping in her bedroom in Federal Heights, Salt Lake City, Utah. She shared the room with her sister Mary Catherine, but their peaceful night was about to take a terrifying turn. A soft-spoken man, armed with a knife, climbed through their open window. This woke Mary Catherine, who pretended to be asleep, hoping to protect her sister. The man ordered Elizabeth to be quiet, threatening to harm her if she didn't comply. Terrified, Elizabeth put on her shoes and was taken outside. Mary Catherine waited 2 hours before waking their parents, Ed and Lois Smart. She told them someone had taken Elizabeth, but they didn't believe her at first, thinking she might be dreaming. However, after inspecting the bedroom and finding a cut window screen, they realized Mary Catherine was telling the truth. They immediately contacted the authorities, who arrived and questioned Mary Catherine about the kidnapper. Mary Catherine described the man as having dark hair on his head, arms, and hands. Although he spoke quietly, she recognized his voice as familiar, but couldn't remember where she had heard it before. The police used the Rachel alert system to broadcast information about Elizabeth's abduction to the public, seeking their help in finding her. As part of their investigation, the police looked into people who had toured the Smart family's home, which was for sale at the time. They also searched the family's computer to see if Elizabeth had interacted with anyone suspicious online. The day after the kidnapping, Ed and Lois Smart made a heartfelt appeal on national television, pleading for their daughter's safe return. The police searched all night for the suspicious individual, but couldn't find them, so they ruled out the tip as not credible. Another tip came from a milkman who claimed to have seen a man driving a gray Honda or Nissan on Elizabeth Street around the time of her disappearance. He wrote down the license plate number, but when the police checked, they couldn't find any information on it, so they dismissed the tip. The police investigation was complicated by the many people who showed up at the Smart residence soon after Elizabeth's abduction, which could have contaminated any potential evidence. They questioned a man who had contact with Elizabeth before her abduction, but he was released after they determined he wasn't involved. The search for Elizabeth continued, with over 20 volunteer pilots searching the Salt Lake area from the air, but they found nothing. Tracking dogs indicated they had smelled something in Red Butte Canyon, but the police search of that area yielded nothing. Elizabeth's father, Ed, was exhausted from the search and was hospitalized briefly, but he was determined to keep looking for his daughter. He and his wife, Lois, were barely holding on. But they believed Elizabeth was alive and would come home to them. Ed took a polygraph test to aid the investigation, and the police ruled out the possibility that Elizabeth had staged her disappearance or run away. Mark Claus, whose daughter was kidnapped and murdered, reached out to the Smart family to offer support and share his own experiences. He noted that the internet had helped spread the word about Elizabeth's disappearance, which increased the chances of finding her. The police received information about a man named Brett Michael Edmonds, who was seen in the area around the time of Elizabeth's abduction. They searched for him, but he had relocated to New Mexico and Texas. After a chase, they arrested a man they thought was Brett, but it turned out to be the wrong person. The police investigated a man who resembled a suspect in Elizabeth's case, but they determined he was not involved. Meanwhile, they found Brett Michael Edmonds in West Virginia, where he was hospitalized due to an overdose and liver failure. Despite his critical condition, Brett was conscious and able to speak, allowing the police to question him about Elizabeth's abduction. After interviewing him, the police cleared Brett as a suspect. The police then shifted their attention to Richard Albert Ritchie, a 48-year-old man who had worked at Ed Smart's home for 2 months the previous year. Ed Smart had hired Richard and even gave him a 1990 Jeep Cherokee in exchange for his labor, unaware that Richard had a long history of criminal offenses, including burglary, robbery, and attempted murder. Richard Ritchie denied any involvement in Elizabeth's abduction and claimed to have cooperated fully with the police, providing DNA samples and sitting through 26 hours of interviews. Despite an exhaustive search of his home, the police found no evidence linking him to the abduction. As the search for Elizabeth continued, the Smart family received a promising lead when a witness reported seeing a girl matching Elizabeth's description in Nebraska. However, after investigating the report, the police found no connection to Elizabeth's case. The Smart family remained hopeful but cautious, determined to find their daughter while acknowledging the possibility of false leads. They kept an open mind, knowing that every lead, no matter how promising, had to be thoroughly investigated before they could finally be reunited with Elizabeth. Richard Ritchie was accused of burglary, a second-degree felony, and theft, a Class A misdemeanor, for stealing items from a house in Federal Heights on April 4, 2001. He was also charged with theft, a third-degree felony, for stealing jewelry and a perfume bottle worth $3,500 from the Smart house on June 6, 2001. However, these stolen items were not related to the investigation into Elizabeth Smart's kidnapping. Salt Lake District Attorney David Yoakum announced the charges in a press conference. When Ed Smart confronted Richard Ritchie about the Smart house theft, Ritchie denied it and was subsequently fired. Unfortunately, the police investigation into Elizabeth's abduction suffered a setback in August 2002 when Richard Ritchie, their prime suspect, died from a brainstem injury that caused hemorrhaging. As Ritchie's condition worsened, he lost the ability to communicate or breathe on his own. His family eventually decided to remove him from life support to prevent further suffering. Although Ritchie's death presented a significant challenge to the investigation, the authorities continued their efforts to find Elizabeth Smart's abductor. The investigation into Elizabeth Smart's kidnapping was hindered when the prime suspect was ruled out, causing doubts about the viability of other leads. Around the same time, in August 2002, an 11-year-old girl was brutally attacked and sexually assaulted in her own bedroom. The severity of her injuries was shocking, with every bone in the middle of her face broken. She required surgery, but remained in critical condition. The police arrested a close friend of her father, Javier Sickler, and charged him with burglary, assault, and attempted murder. Sickler claimed to have knocked on the front door of the victim's home, but said he blacked out afterward Despite initial similarities with Elizabeth Smart's abduction, the police investigated and determined that Javier Cicla was not involved in her kidnapping. As the months passed with no sign of Elizabeth Smart, the police investigating her abduction turned to unorthodox methods to find her. One approach involved consulting psychics who claimed to possess extrasensory perception that could provide clues about her whereabouts. The psychics told investigators that Elizabeth might be found in a crypt in the foothills above Salt Lake City. This lead prompted a Seattle-based company to come forward, stating that over a dozen of its members had pinpointed Elizabeth's body using a specialized psychic technique called technical remote viewing. According to the group, their psychic abilities revealed that Elizabeth had been killed shortly after her abduction. However, when officers searched the specified tomb, they found no evidence of Elizabeth's disappearance. In November 2002, Walter Kenneth Holloway was arrested after falsely claiming to be the kidnapper of Elizabeth Smart. He contacted the Smart family and the Salt Lake Police Department, demanding a $3 million ransom from Ed and Lois Smart in exchange for their daughter's safe return. Holloway threatened to harm Elizabeth if his demands weren't met. However, the police quickly discovered that Holloway was not involved in the abduction and was simply trying to extort money from the Smart family. They tracked him down to South Carolina and cleared him of any involvement in the case. Ed Smart was outraged by the extortion scheme, feeling that it wasted valuable police resources and distracted them from finding his daughter. In October 2002, Mary Catherine, Elizabeth's sister, had a sudden realization. The voice of her sister's abductor sounded like Emmanuel, a man the family had briefly hired to do some yard work and roofing a year earlier. However, the police had doubts about this lead because Emmanuel had only worked for the family for a short time. A lot of time had passed since the abduction, and Mary Catherine had only heard the abductor's voice briefly. Despite their skepticism, the family worked with a sketch artist to draw a picture of Emmanuel based on their descriptions. The sketch was finally released in February 2003 and was featured on several TV shows, including Larry King Live and America's Most Wanted. A relative of a man named Brian David Mitchell recognized the sketch and contacted the police, providing them with recent photos of him. These photographs enabled authorities to confirm that the sketch was an accurate representation of Brian David Mitchell. On March 12, 2003, two couples in Sandy, Utah spotted Brian David Mitchell with a woman and a girl. Recognizing him from news photos as Elizabeth Smart's abductor, they immediately called the police. Brian David Mitchell was accompanied by his wife, Wanda Barzee, when he was found with Elizabeth Smart. The police were quickly alerted and sent to the scene, where they safely rescued Elizabeth Smart and took Brian David Mitchell and Wanda Barzee into custody. After her rescue, Elizabeth's testimony revealed a disturbing account of her 9-month ordeal. She described being taken to a hidden encampment outside Salt Lake City, where she met Wanda Barzee, who played a significant role in her captivity. The camp was a makeshift shelter surrounded by dense foliage, carefully camouflaged to avoid detection. Elizabeth Smart described Wanda Barzee as initially caring and nurturing, offering comfort and warmth. However, as time passed, Barzee's behavior changed, and she began to exert control over Elizabeth. She forced Elizabeth to follow their unusual religious beliefs, insisting that she pray, read scriptures, and participate in religious rituals. One of the most distressing experiences Elizabeth endured during her captivity was being forced to marry Brian David Mitchell. Barzee threatened Elizabeth with physical harm if she refused to comply. The wedding ceremony, which Mitchell claimed was a symbol of eternal love, was actually a sham with no legal basis. It solely served as a means for Mitchell to assert his dominance over Elizabeth. After being forced into a marriage, Brian David Mitchell assaulted Elizabeth. He justified his actions by claiming to be a king, ordained to kidnap virgin brides to fight against the Antichrist. Mitchell believed Elizabeth was the first of many virgins he would abduct, and that she would join him in this fictional battle. During her captivity, Elizabeth suffered unimaginable abuse to prevent her escape. She was chained to a tree with a metal cable, restricting her movement outside her tent. This constant confinement made her feel trapped and helpless, unable to seek freedom. In addition to physical restraint, Elizabeth was also subjected to psychological manipulation. She was forced to take on a new identity, choosing the name Esther after the biblical figure. This name change symbolized the loss of her own identity and the control exerted over her by Mitchell and his accomplice, Wanda Barzee. Elizabeth suffered severe trauma during her captivity, particularly due to the frequent and repeated sexual assaults by Brian David Mitchell, which occurred multiple times a day. This abuse left her deeply traumatized and fearful. In addition to the sexual abuse, Elizabeth was forced to look at explicit materials, which further worsened her trauma and feelings of degradation. Moreover, she lived in constant fear of violence and death, as Brian David Mitchell regularly threatened to kill her. This perpetual state of fear and uncertainty amplified the abuse she endured, leaving her feeling utterly overwhelmed and powerless. To gain more control over Elizabeth, Mitchell would often force her to consume alcohol and drugs. He used these substances to reduce her ability to resist him and make her more vulnerable to his control. As a result, Elizabeth was frequently disoriented and helpless, making it easier for her abusers to commit their atrocious acts. After a lengthy legal process, Wanda Barzee admitted to her role in Elizabeth's kidnapping and was sentenced to 15 years in both state and federal prison, with the sentences to be served concurrently. In 2016, her federal sentence was terminated, and she was transferred from a Texas prison to a Utah prison to begin serving her state sentence. When Wanda Barzee was set to be released in September 2018, Elizabeth Smart, who had become a child safety advocate, strongly objected to her release. Elizabeth believed that Barzee still posed a threat to others, as she had never shown remorse for her actions or any signs of rehabilitation. Despite Elizabeth's protests, Wanda Barzee was released from prison. Elizabeth Smart's protest attracted extensive media attention and brought to light the ongoing concerns about the release of convicted criminals from prison. After a lengthy legal battle, Brian David Mitchell was finally sentenced to life in prison for kidnapping Elizabeth. At his sentencing hearing, Elizabeth took the opportunity to confront her kidnapper directly, delivering a powerful and emotional statement. In her statement, Elizabeth described the immense pain and trauma Mitchell had inflicted upon her, explaining that the 9 months she spent in captivity had stolen a part of her life that she could never recover. Despite this horrific experience, Elizabeth demonstrated remarkable resilience and determination, assuring Mitchell that she would go on to live a good life, unperturbed by the darkness he had brought into her world. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Jacqueline Vandergriff. Born on March 4th, 1992, in Carrollton, Texas, Jacqueline "Jackie" Vandergriff was the younger of 2 daughters. She grew up in the Colony, Frisco, Texas, surrounded by her loving family. Before she could even walk, Jackie demonstrated a natural talent for gymnastics by learning to somersault. This early start sparked a passion that would drive her future success. Recognizing her potential, her parents enrolled her in gymnastics classes at just 3 years old. As she grew, she refined her skills and enthusiastically participated in various competitions. Those who knew Jackie described her as a kind and empathetic person with a heart of gold. She genuinely cared about others and was a loyal friend who inspired those around her to be their best selves. Her presence brought comfort and joy to everyone she met, whether through words of encouragement or simply being a listening ear. Jackie's kindness knew no bounds, extending far beyond her human relationships to encompass a deep love for all living beings. A lifelong vegetarian, she was a fierce supporter of pet adoption from no-kill shelters and had a special place in her heart for animals. In her free time, Jackie was an avid reader and found solace in the magical world of Harry Potter, her favorite book series. Music was another one of her passions, with an eclectic taste that ranged from Pink to James Taylor and Rob Thomas. She was especially fond of musicals, with Rent being her absolute favorite. She would attend every performance that came to town. After graduating from Wakeland High School in Frisco, Jackie decided to pursue her passion for beauty by enrolling in the Paul Mitchell School for Cosmetology. Jackie Vandergriff pursued her passion for beauty and wellness by becoming a licensed esthetician. She then took her education to the next level by enrolling at Texas Women's University, where she majored in nutrition and food science. Her goal was to help others understand the importance of good nutrition and make healthy lifestyle choices. With a bright future ahead, Jackie seemed destined for success. She was on track to make a positive impact in the world. Tragically, her life was cut short in the summer of 2016 when she had a fatal encounter with a dangerous individual. Upon arriving at the scene, the officer found a worn footpath in a wooded area and followed it to a burned-out patch of land. There, he discovered a plastic blue kiddie pool containing a body that had been set on fire, making it unrecognizable. Due to the severity of the burns, it was impossible to determine the body's identity, including its age, gender, race, or any other distinguishing features. The remains were taken to the medical examiner's office for further examination. Later, fingerprint identification revealed that the body belonged to 24-year-old Jackie Vandergriff. As detectives investigated Jackie's final hours, they discovered that she was last seen in Denton, near College, where she visited two bars, Fry Street Public House and Shots and Crafts. While waiting for security footage from these establishments, the medical examiner performed an autopsy on Jackie's body. The examination revealed that Jackie was killed, dismembered, decapitated, and set on fire, with further mutilation occurring after her death. The most disturbing aspect of Jackie's murder was the removal of her heart from her body. As news of her death spread throughout Denton, the detectives started receiving numerous tips from people who reported seeing a suspicious individual lurking around the crime scene where a fire had been set. After further investigation, the detectives were able to acquire CCTV footage from two bars that Jackie had visited in the hours leading up to her murder. At 7 p.m., a man entered the Fry Street Public House and had a drink at the bar. An hour later, Jackie walked in and struck up a conversation with the bartender and the man. Security footage showed their interactions, suggesting a potential connection between them. About 45 minutes after arriving at the bar, Jackie tweeted, "Glad I decided to get off Tinder and walk to a bar." Later, Jackie and the man left the bar together and headed to Shots and Crafts, where they socialized with a group of women. At around 9:45 p.m., Jackie and the man departed Shots and Crafts together. Surveillance cameras tracked their movements, showing them arriving at a convenience store where his car was parked. Jackie got into his vehicle, and that's the last time she was seen before her murder. The detective interviewed the bartender at the Fry Street Public House, where Jackie had applied for a job, and had a friendly conversation with the bartender and a male customer. Although the bartender couldn't provide any information about what happened to Jackie and the man after they left the bar, the investigation led the detectives to Shots and Crafts, where security footage showed Jackie and the man together. One of the women at the bar recalled receiving a business card from the man, who was a personal trainer. She had exchanged contact information with him because she was interested in fitness. At first, this detail seemed unimportant, but it would later prove to be a crucial discovery in the case. After handing over the card, she willingly shared the information with the investigators. The card belonged to Charles Bryant. Meanwhile, the detectives had obtained security footage from Walmart, taken at 4 a.m., showing Charles buying a shovel. The detectives then launched a thorough investigation into Charles Bryant's identity, as he was the last person seen with Jackie before her murder. The results were deeply disturbing. Charles Bryant, a 29-year-old man, lived 20 miles away from Denton, but he was drawn to the city for a specific reason. He was desperate to rekindle his relationship with his ex-girlfriend, Caitlin, who lived in Grapevine and attended the University of North Texas. 3 months prior, Caitlin had met Charles at her home in Grapevine, where she worked as a server at a restaurant. On her high school graduation day, Charles stood out from the high school boys Caitlin knew. He was almost a decade older, in his late 20s, and had a muscular physique covered in tattoos. Working as a personal trainer and bartender, Charles had accumulated unique skills and traits that fascinated Caitlin. In the summer of 2016, Caitlin spent most days with Charles at Grapevine Lake. As they spent more time together, their attraction grew, and Caitlin was drawn to Charles's mysterious personality. However, not everyone was pleased with their relationship. Caitlin's mother noticed the significant age difference between them as they grew closer. Caitlin's mother asked to see a photo of Charles, wanting to understand her daughter's relationship better. Although initially open-minded, she felt uneasy when she saw his piercing eyes, sensing something evil. Growing increasingly worried about Caitlin's well-being, her mother voiced her concerns, advising her to reevaluate her relationship with Charles. Caitlin ignored her mother's warnings, brushing them off as typical parental worries. She was blind to the danger signs beneath the surface of her innocent-sounding romance. Unbeknownst to her, her harmless feelings were about to escalate into a terrifying experience. At first, Caitlin was thrilled with her new relationship with her older boyfriend, but as time went on, she began to have doubts and wondered if her mother had been right all along. Charles seemed overly self-absorbed and controlling, and Caitlin couldn't shake the feeling that he had an inflated sense of self-importance. Charles frequently made Caitlin feel inadequate by telling her she'd never find someone as good as him. As she prepared to leave for college in mid-August 2016, she realized she couldn't ignore the red flags in their relationship any longer and decided to break up with him. The next day, Charles appeared at Caitlin's home, begging her to take him back and promising to change. She initially gave in, but soon realized her mistake. Within a week, Caitlin had moved to Denton for college and ended the relationship once and for all. However, Charles refused to accept the breakup. On August 24th, police stopped him on the University of North Texas campus due to his suspicious driving. Although they initially suspected he was driving under the influence, his blood alcohol level was within the legal limit. Instead, they found he had several outstanding warrants, arrested him, and later released him after several hours. After their breakup, Charles showed up at Caitlin's dorm room at the University of North Texas, which he had somehow found. Caitlin called 911, and by the time the police arrived, Charles was gone. When the officer asked Caitlin what happened, she explained that she had ended their relationship because she was tired of how Charles treated her and spoke to her. Despite this, Charles refused to accept the breakup. The police issued a temporary no trespass order, banning Charles from the UNT campus. However, Charles was determined to find a way to reach Caitlin, even if it meant ignoring the restrictions. On August 31st, Charles found Caitlin on her first day at a new job. When Caitlin saw him, she told him to leave. Caitlin then scheduled a meeting with her manager to discuss the situation and ask that Charles be barred from entering the business. However, the manager told Caitlin that he couldn't grant her request. Caitlin was forced to quit her job because of an incident at her workplace. Charles was determined to confront her and would stop at nothing to exact his revenge and cause her more harm. This led to a cycle of fear and intimidation, putting Caitlin's life in danger. Caitlin's mother was worried about her safety and wanted her to come home, but Caitlin felt safe living in her dorm room on the University of Nebraska campus. However, on September 6th, Charles suddenly appeared at her dorm room, banging on the door and urging Caitlin to come out, claiming he had something for her. Fearing the worst, Caitlin hid in her friend's closet, too scared to emerge. Caitlin's deep-seated fears intensified as she imagined the worst-case scenarios that Charles might have planned for her. Fearing for her life, she made a quick decision and called the emergency services while hiding in a closet, speaking in a barely audible whisper, terrified that Charles might overhear her. Despite the dispatcher's efforts, Caitlin's voice was hardly audible due to her overwhelming fear. Meanwhile, the police arrived at the scene, but Charles had already escaped. However, he left behind a haunting reminder of his presence, a bouquet of flowers and a handwritten 2-page letter addressed to Caitlin. The letter contained unsettling messages that further fueled Caitlin's fear. Shortly after the incident, the police caught up with Charles outside the campus, where he was dressed in athletic wear, pretending to be a student out for a jog. He was arrested for trespassing and released on bail a few hours later. Caitlin tried to cut all ties with Charles by blocking him on her phone, email, and social media. However, he persisted in finding ways to reach out to her, creating multiple accounts to stay in touch. As Charles's behavior became increasingly threatening, the police intervened to help Caitlin get a protective court order. The very next day, she officially filed a petition for the order, which legally protected her from further harassment. After his first arrest, Charles continued to contact Caitlin despite a protective order against him. This led to his second arrest for stalking. He was arrested again just 2 weeks later for violating the protective order once more. While out on bail, Charles went to a location where Caitlin often hung out, where detectives suspected he met Jackie Vandergriff. Although there was no physical evidence linking Charles to Jackie's murder, detectives were concerned for Caitlin's safety due to the circumstantial evidence. Charles sent Caitlin several messages, including photos and texts, which led to his fourth arrest for violating the protective order. While in jail, detectives questioned Charles about Jackie's murder, but he denied any involvement. A search of Charles's home turned up a large military-style knife, Jackie's school purse, and a kiddie pool that matched the one where her body was found. Detectives consulted an expert who specialized in dealing with prolific killers, who believed Charles was hiding something. The expert used a friendly and casual approach to try to gain Charles's trust and get him to talk about the crime. By suggesting possible scenarios and portraying Jackie as an instigator, the expert tried to get Charles to open up. During the 3-hour interrogation, Charles's story changed, and he eventually admitted to unintentionally killing Jackie during what he called kinky sex. Detectives believed the motive behind the murder was Charles's uncontrollable rage towards Caitlin, his ex-girlfriend. Charles claimed that Jackie asked him to choke her with a large zip tie he had in his car, but he insisted that her death was an accident, and neither of them had intentionally tightened the zip tie. After the interview, Charles Bryant was arrested and charged with Jackie Vandergriff's murder. Following his arrest, Charles's ex-girlfriend Caitlin went on social media and checked Jackie's Facebook page, only to discover that they were already friends. This discovery made Caitlin remember receiving a friend request from Jackie's Facebook page on the day Jackie's body was found, before Caitlin knew about the case. Caitlin became convinced that Charles, the prime suspect in Jackie's murder, must have used Jackie's phone to send her the friend request. Christy, who had met Charles on a dating app, was shocked to learn that he had been charged with murder. In her brief time with Charles, she noticed several red flags. He was quiet and reserved, but he became attached to her quickly. When she ended their relationship, Charles persisted, professing his love despite never having kissed. Christy, who worked with abused children, recognized patterns in Charles's behavior that were similar to those she had seen in her young clients. She suspected that Charles might have been a victim of child abuse. One day, she gathered the courage to ask him directly. To her surprise, Charles admitted to having experienced childhood trauma. The police couldn't find any evidence to support Charles's claims of being abused. Despite this, Christy believed him because she thought he was a kind person and felt sorry for him. She kept in touch with him, but from a distance, and never thought he was capable of murder. Jackie's autopsy didn't provide many answers, such as how she died or where she was killed before her body was dismembered and set on fire. This lack of evidence made it difficult for the prosecution to build a strong murder case, as many key questions remained unanswered. Charles admitted to getting rid of Jackie's body after she died accidentally during rough sex. Although he confessed to disposing of her body, he denied killing her. The prosecution wanted Charles's ex-girlfriend, Caitlin, to testify about his history of stalking and violent behavior. They hoped to show a connection between his anger towards Caitlin and his eventual murder of Jackie, who bore a strong resemblance to Caitlin, as Charles himself acknowledged during questioning. Caitlin testified in court without a jury present, but when asked to identify Charles, she was hesitant and uncomfortable. She eventually pointed him out, commenting on his smirk. After testifying, Caitlin left the courtroom and broke down in tears, overcome with emotion. The judge later ruled that Caitlin would not be allowed to share details about her past relationship with Charles in front of the jury. A year and a half after Jackie's death, Charles went on trial for her murder in April 2018. However, Jackie's best friend couldn't bring herself to attend the trial, finding the thought of facing Charles in person too distressing. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Chad Durman. Chad Durman, a 32-year-old man from Claremont County, Ohio, was married to 34-year-old Laura. They had a blended family with 3 young sons, Hunter 4, Clayton 3, and Chase 7, and a teenage stepdaughter, Alexis 16. Laura stayed at home to care for the children while Chad worked to support the family. On June 15, 2023, Chad arrived home from work earlier than usual and suggested taking a nap with his family. He invited Laura and their 3 sons to join him in their bedroom, where they spent some time laughing and chatting together. However, this joyful moment would soon turn into a horrific tragedy. After a few minutes, Chad got up and opened the gun safe next to their bed. He retrieved a MAR model HC-22 rifle, loaded it, and shot his 4-year-old son Hunter twice. The sound of the gunshot was heard by Alexis, who was watching TV in the family room. She rushed to the bedroom to see what had happened. As Alexis reached the doorway, she was met with a horrific scene, her brother being shot. Overcome with terror, she turned and fled as fast as possible. Meanwhile, Laura, who was with her kids, rushed to help her son Hunter, who had been injured. She yelled at the other children to run for their lives. Alexis saw the eldest boy fleeing in the wrong direction, towards a field, and shouted at him to keep running. Chad, however, was hot on his heels, and soon shot his own 7-year-old son, Clayton. As Clayton fell to the ground, bleeding severely, Chad stood over him, seemingly triumphant. Alexis witnessed this horror and was paralyzed with fear. She then turned and ran back into the house, grabbed her youngest brother, and fled to safety, desperate to save their lives. Chad pursued her, caught up, and pointed his gun at her, demanding that she hand over the 3-year-old, Chase. Alexis begged and pleaded with Chad to spare her life, but he tried to shoot her in the head, only to find he had run out of bullets. Alexis took advantage of the reprieve and escaped to the nearby fire station, where she frantically stopped a passerby to get help. At 4:15 p.m., a girl called 911 to report that her stepfather had killed everyone in her house. The police arrived at the scene 10 minutes later, at 4:25 p.m., and found Chad sitting on the porch with a rifle beside him. They quickly arrested him and placed him in handcuffs. Despite the chaos, Chad remained calm and didn't resist arrest. Meanwhile, his stepdaughter Laura was taken to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center to receive treatment for her injuries. Fortunately, Chad's stepdaughter Alexis had managed to escape from the house earlier that day, avoiding the fate of her 3 brothers, who were tragically killed by her stepfather. Chad was officially arrested at 4:27 p.m. on June 15, 2023. When the police took Chad into custody, he showed no signs of distress or remorse. instead behaving politely as though nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. He was later taken to jail for further questioning and investigation. During the interrogation, Chad confessed to police that he had been planning the murders since October 2022. Chad told investigators that he had gone without sleep for 3 to 4 days because the idea of harming his own sons was too much to bear. This admission provided a disturbing glimpse into his state of mind in the days leading up to the tragedy. Investigators also looked into whether Chad had a history of aggressive behavior. Chad's phone records were reviewed as part of the investigation, which revealed that he had a history of traffic violations in Claremont County, with one exception, a criminal damage incident that occurred when he was 18 years old. Additionally, a 2010 domestic violence case was discovered, in which Chad was accused of choking his father, Keith Derman. However, the case was eventually dropped due to Keith Derman's failure to appear in court as a witness for the prosecution. These records provided valuable insight into Chad's legal history and past dealings with law enforcement in the county. Meanwhile, one of Chad's neighbors, Richard Kanan, told a news channel that Chad was angry on a daily basis. The woman who called 911 also gave an interview to the news channel, describing how she was running with her little black lab and frantically screaming, "Call 911! Call 911!" during the incident. Chad's property tax records show that he was up to date with his payments until 2023, suggesting that he was not experiencing financial difficulties with his mortgage. When questioned by detectives, his 59-year-old father, Keith Derman, was left stunned and struggling to come to terms with the news. "I'm still trying to understand," he said. Keith Derman expressed his disbelief that his son could commit such a heinous crime. He also hinted that Chad was struggling with personal issues that had become too much to handle. The community was deeply shocked by the news of the killings, with neighbors expressing their surprise and stating that they never would have expected such actions from Chad. Initially, Chad confessed to the crimes during his interrogation, pleading guilty to all charges. However, during his first court hearing on June 23, 2023, he changed his plea to not guilty. At a subsequent hearing on the same day, Chad appeared visibly distraught, wearing a green bulletproof vest and breaking down in tears as prosecutors detailed the horrific events of June 15. The judge described the case as an act of unimaginable cruelty. The father, who stands before the court, intentionally murdered his 3 young sons, aged 3, 4, and 7, in his own home using a rifle. The chief prosecutor revealed that Chad meticulously planned the events, reflecting a disturbing premeditation. One of his sons attempted to escape by running away in a nearby field, but Chad chased and caught the boy, dragging him back to the yard where he was subsequently killed alongside his brothers. The trauma inflicted by this man on his family, the community, law enforcement, first responders, and society at large is unfathomable. While there has been a full admission of guilt, the case is still unfolding, and the full extent of the facts is still being discovered. However, the sheer horror of what is known so far is almost impossible to comprehend. Chad's murder of his own sons is one of the most horrific, craven, and cowardly acts imaginable. According to the detailed bill of particulars filed in Claremont County, the judge was presented with a disturbing account of the events. The prosecutor read aloud the sequence of incidents that led to the tragedy. Chad deliberately planned and executed the killings, lining up his sons and shooting them. When their mother attempted to intervene, Chad shot her in the hand. The prosecutor revealed that Chad fired a total of 9 shots, causing devastating harm. One boy was hit once, while the other 2 were each struck 4 times. The prosecutor, Mark T.L., emphasized the brutality of Chad's actions, stating that the brutal killings left the family and community in a state of shock. Prosecutor Mark Talvey revealed that Chad Dorman confessed to the murder, saying, "I did it. Take me to jail. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have shot them." During the interrogation, Chad also pleaded guilty. As a result, Talvi is seeking the death penalty. In a statement to the media after the court hearing, Talvi expressed his outrage, calling the crime the most sickening and horrifying he has seen. He imagined the terror the victims felt as their father, who was supposed to protect them, murdered them. Talvi vowed to do everything in his power to ensure Chad Dorman spends the rest of his life in prison. He began by offering his deepest sympathy to the family for their unspeakable tragedy. Chad Dorman is accused of committing a horrific act of violence against his own family, resulting in the tragic deaths of his 3 young sons, Hunter, Clayton, and Chase. He faces 21 charges, including 9 counts of aggravated murder, 8 counts of kidnapping, and 4 counts of felonious assault, which could lead to the death penalty if convicted. The grand jury has indicted Dorman on these charges, and he is currently being held in the Claremont County Jail with a bail set at $20 million, the highest in the county's history. Dorman's lawyer has entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, claiming that he was suffering from a serious mental illness at the time of the killings. The lawyer argues that executing someone with a serious mental illness is cruel and unusual punishment, violating both the Ohio and U.S. constitutions. The prosecution has requested a mental evaluation, and a court date has been set for May 3, 2024, to discuss the lawyer's request. The defense has agreed to provide a report from a mental health expert by June 3, 2024, to support their claim. Meanwhile, a judge has ruled that Dorman's confession will be thrown out due to violations of his Miranda rights during police interrogation. The police failed to fully read him his rights and continued questioning him after he requested an attorney. Several witnesses, including police officers, have testified in court, describing their encounters with Dorman. One officer recalled that Dorman said, "Take me to jail," during the drive to the sheriff's office, while another officer remembered Dorman referencing the Bible during his interrogation, saying that he did not kill his wife. In this case, Chad expressed a desire for a lawyer during the interrogation, but the detective ignored him. When a suspect clearly requests a lawyer during a custodial interrogation, it's not the start of a test, but rather a signal for the officer to stop questioning them. However, Detective Ross failed to cease the questioning and even left Chad alone for a while before returning to continue the interrogation. During the court hearing, it was revealed that Detective Ross did not read Chad his full Miranda rights. When questioned about this, Ross admitted to not reading the rights verbatim, but claimed to have covered the most important parts. However, it was established that Ross had omitted crucial parts of the rights. Ultimately, the judge ruled that the investigators failed to follow proper procedures during Chad's arrest in June 2023, violating his Miranda rights. Chad's lawyers argued that during his 3-hour interrogation, Chad requested a lawyer at least twice, but the detectives disregarded his request and continued questioning him. Additionally, they claimed that Chad's earlier guilty plea was a result of intimidation by the investigators. The judge later ruled that the detectives failed to fully inform Chad of his rights before the interrogation. Thus, any statements made during that time would be inadmissible as evidence in future court proceedings. This ruling significantly impacted the trial, limiting the evidence that could be presented against Chad. The legal complexities and public interest in the case increased, with Chad facing a potential death penalty if convicted. His trial is scheduled to begin on July 8, 2024, but the recent ruling may change the course of the trial. A final court hearing is set for June 14th, just before the anniversary of the tragic events. The trial is expected to last from July 8th to August 2nd. However, the authorities are still unsure about the motive behind Chad's actions. The motive behind Chad's shooting of Clayton, Hunter, and Chase remains unknown, but some people believe it may have been an act of revenge against his 34-year-old wife, whom he suspected of infidelity. However, this motive has not been officially confirmed. Meanwhile, a memorial ride was held today to raise funds for the Dorman boys' family. with hundreds of people participating in the 15-mile ride through New Richmond. The event, which featured motorcycles, jeeps, and cars, attracted over 100 participants and was organized by Alan Easterday. The community came together to show their support for the family during this difficult time, while the boy's father awaits trial for their murder. The accused, Chad Derman, is being held in custody at Claremont County Jail as the legal case against him continues. Many questions still linger, including what motivated him to commit such a heinous act against his own children. While the community is still searching for answers, they are holding on to hope that justice will be served and the truth will eventually come to light. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Georgine Kruger. Georgine Kruger was born on April 11, 1992, in Munich as the middle child in a family of 3. Her older brother, Tommy, was 8 years older, and her younger sister, Michelle, was 2.5 years younger. In June 2006, Georgine and her family, including her mother and sisters, relocated to Berlin. Her mother had secured a well-paying job, and they settled into a home on Stendal Street in the Mobit district. Georgine and her sister started attending one of the top local schools on September 1st, which was accessible by bus despite being in a different district. Their mother was satisfied with her new job and had ambitious plans for the future. However, their peaceful life was soon disrupted. From a young age, Georgine had aspirations of becoming an actress. Inspired by Indian films, she dedicated herself to singing and dancing. She actively pursued her passion by participating in school theater productions and taking acting and stage speech courses. Her teachers recognized her talent and predicted a successful and famous future for her. On Friday, September 22, 2006, Georgine's luck changed for the better. She successfully auditioned for a guest role in the TV series Turkish for Beginners and was expecting a call back on Monday, September 25, to finalize the details and sign a contract. As the new girl in school, she had already caught everyone's attention. However, on Monday, September 25, Georgine followed her usual routine and went to school. She was supposed to be back home by 2 p.m., and since she was expecting the call later that afternoon, she asked her grandmother to answer the phone. Georgine's classmates noticed that she seemed distracted and kept checking the time throughout the day. After school, Georgine quickly gathered her belongings and caught her usual bus, number 27, to head home. She got off at the bus stop, which was close to her house, but never made it home. Georgine vanished somewhere between the bus stop and her apartment and was never seen again. Her grandmother, who was expecting her granddaughters to return from school, had prepared lunch and set the table. Georgine was supposed to arrive first, followed by Michelle, who had a later dismissal due to her music classes. However, Georgine failed to appear, which was unusual because she had been looking forward to returning home and had no plans to stay out. When Michelle arrived home at 3 o'clock, her grandmother became worried because Georgine was nowhere to be found. The grandmother tried calling Georgine's phone, but it was turned off. She tried calling again and again, but there was no answer. The worry turned into fear, and when Vina came home from work and learned that her daughter was missing, she knew something was seriously wrong. The police started searching for Georgine, going from house to house, talking to everyone, and checking every possible place. They even used dogs to try to find her scent, but there was no sign of her. By the next morning, pictures of Georgine were posted all over the city, asking for anyone with information to come forward. Many people called the police, saying they had seen a girl who looked like Georgine, but none of the leads were real. At the same time, the police were checking on people who had committed crimes before, especially those who had been involved with minors. However, all their efforts did not produce any results. It was as if Georgine had disappeared into thin air, leaving behind no signs or belongings, making it seem like she never existed. After months of unsuccessful searching, the investigation into Georgine's disappearance was put on hold due to a lack of leads or clues. However, a year later, an anonymous caller claimed that her body was at the bottom of a nearby lake. Despite being unable to identify the caller, the police decided to investigate this new information. A team of skilled divers thoroughly searched the lake bed using advanced equipment but found no sign of Georgine. Although the lead proved to be false, it renewed public interest in the case. The media revisited the story, prompting the police to conduct another search operation. Investigators were certain that Georgine had passed away, but her family, the Georgines, couldn't accept this. To cope, her mother created a story that her daughter had run away to India and was now a Bollywood star, fulfilling her dreams of singing and dancing. This thought gave her comfort and strength to carry on for her younger daughter's sake. Years after her disappearance, in 2016, the search efforts started again. A resident of Stendhal Street contacted the police, concerned about a neighbor who was often inviting underage girls to his home. This neighbor was identified as 35-year-old Ali K, a Turkish immigrant. On the surface, Ali K appeared to be a devoted family man, married with 3 children. However, a closer look revealed the disturbing truth. The police were shocked to discover that Ali K had been investigated 4 years earlier for luring a local schoolgirl with promises of selling her a trendy smartphone at a low price. He took the teenager to the storage room in the basement of his apartment building where he physically assaulted her by hitting her on the head and then forced her into an intimate. Following the assault, he attempted to silence her by making her promise not to reveal the incident to anyone. He handed her a paper napkin to wipe away her tears and helped her clean up before releasing her. Although she agreed to remain silent in order to escape, she immediately informed her parents about the incident once she was free. Together, they reported the violent actions to the police. The schoolgirl described the storage room in the basement, saying it looked like a space created by someone with a disturbed mind. Ali K was arrested the same day but strongly denied his guilt. He shared his own version of the events, claiming he was selling a gadget and that the teenager had expressed interest in buying it, which is why she was in his basement storage room. They went downstairs together. When the guest saw the device, she expressed her long-held desire to own one. However, due to financial constraints, she offered to compensate in an alternative manner. According to Ali, she initiated intimate contact by kissing him and beginning to undress. He attempted to reason with her and pushed her away, resulting in her falling and hitting her head. This account explained the injuries and bruises on her body. Nevertheless, there was no evidence of intimate contact, as Ali had used protection and later disposed of it. Ali's wife, Melik, supported her husband's account and accused the guest of behaving inappropriately and attempting to seduce him. Consequently, Ali received a suspended sentence for causing moderate bodily harm. As the police reopened the investigation into Georgine's disappearance, they decided to re-examine Ali thoroughly. Ali K did not have a stable job and relied on odd jobs and benefits to get by. He had a fondness for gambling, which often led to debt. He frequently visited the Turkish coffee shop on the ground floor of his building, where he socialized with various people who would buy him food and drinks. Ali K took great care to maintain a youthful appearance, often spending excessively on fashionable clothes, including using his children's benefits. However, his most disturbing trait was his attraction to young girls. He would frequently try to meet and interact with them, asking inappropriate questions and offering illicit favors, such as buying them alcohol or cigarettes. Despite his suspicious behavior, the police couldn't link him to the disappearance of Georgine. The case had gone cold, but with the emergence of new evidence, it was reopened, and Ali K became a prime suspect. When questioned, he denied any involvement in Georgine's disappearance. A search of Georgine's storage room in the basement revealed no signs of Georgine. However, detectives noted that the space seemed more suited for meetings than storage. It was discovered that Ali K had been previously questioned and his basement inspected, but the storage room had been overlooked. At the time, there was no reason to suspect him, and the door was always locked, making it inaccessible to anyone but the Ali K. Ali had been actively involved in the search operation and was one of the most dedicated members. Although the police didn't have any concrete evidence to charge Ali, they decided to keep him under surveillance to gather more information. They organized unofficial monitoring and intercepted all his phone calls, which soon yielded initial results. Detectives discovered that K had significant debts, unknown to his wife, totaling around 10,000 euros, which he had accumulated through poker losses. The investigation shifted its focus to this aspect, and undercover agents were introduced to K's close circle. Their goal was to gain his trust, extract necessary information, and obtain a recorded confession. However, they had to proceed slowly and carefully to avoid arousing K's suspicion. To achieve this, a special agent codenamed Håkan was prepared and sent in. He posed as a successful businessman who had recently moved to the Mobit area to open a car service station. Håkan visited the cafe in Ali's building a few times, where he loudly discussed business plans with a partner. As they left, the partner mentioned that they needed to find a manager soon, emphasizing that it was a well-paying position and they needed to choose the right person. After the second man departed, Håkan remained to finish his coffee. It was then that Ali K appeared and took a seat at Håkan's table. Håkan seized the opportunity to offer himself for the manager position, initiating a conversation with Ali K. The discussion quickly transitioned into a casual chat, during which the businessman observed that Ali K seemed well suited for the role. As the conversation progressed, Håkan mentioned the salary associated with the position. Upon hearing the figure, Ali's eyes lit up as he began envisioning the possibilities, paying off his debts and acquiring the sports car he had long desired. The men started talking regularly after exchanging phone numbers, and their conversations quickly turned into a friendship. Håkan even took Ali on business trips to other cities to build trust and get closer to him. However, this friendship had an unexpected outcome. The suspect tried to present himself in the best possible attribute to his employer, bragging about even his smallest accomplishments and keeping quiet about any wrongdoing. Months later, with the case stalled, the investigation introduced a new agent, Susan, who posed as Håkan's girlfriend. Her goal was to befriend Ali's wife, Melik, and uncover any secrets he might be hiding. It didn't take long for Susan and Melik to get acquainted, and soon all four were socializing together as families. Melik was a sociable person, but she had a very positive view of her husband. For years, she had ignored his infidelities, dismissed accusations of violence from a schoolgirl, and genuinely believed her husband was a good person who was just unlucky in his career. However, things were about to take a turn. Susan realized that Melik wasn't just covering up for Ali. Melik truly believed he was incapable of harming anyone. The agents devised a plan to trick the suspect, Ali K, by spreading a false rumor about a breakthrough in the Georgine case. They left a newspaper with the article in Ali's car, which they had previously installed with cameras and recording devices. When Ali's wife, Melik, found the newspaper, she briefly showed surprise that the case was still being investigated but quickly lost interest. It became clear that Melik was unaware of her husband's involvement in the crime. Despite the agents' efforts, their 6-month-long investigation yielded no confessions. Ali K presented himself as honest and trustworthy, while Melik remained oblivious to her husband's wrongdoing. The agents had gained the trust of the Ali family to the point of being asked to look after their children, but their cover was becoming increasingly expensive to maintain. The agents had to lease a space for a fake auto repair shop and create a sham employment contract to avoid raising Ali's suspicions. In a last-ditch effort, they introduced a new agent, Kor, who would play the role of a villain. According to the backstory, Kor was Håkan's cousin with a criminal record, involved in illicit businesses. It was hoped that Ollie would form a bond with someone who shared similar interests and confide in them about his wrongdoings. Ollie quickly befriended Kaur, and they spent time together, going to various nightclubs and indulging in reckless behavior. Kaur openly admitted that he earned his money through shady means and wanted to spend it lavishly, with Ollie eager to join in. At the same time, Kaur frequently complained about his girlfriend, claiming he couldn't break up with her because she was blackmailing him and threatening to expose his illicit business activities to the authorities. According to Kaur, his girlfriend constantly demanded money, and her expectations were becoming increasingly excessive. One day, while drinking with Ollie, Kaur announced that he wanted to get rid of his girlfriend, who was blackmailing him, and was willing to pay 100,000 euros to anyone who would take care of the problem. Ollie's interest was piqued, and he offered to handle the task himself. Kaur agreed, but suggested they discuss the details in a private setting when they were sober. In November 2017, the two men sat in a car and discussed their plan to eliminate Kaur's troublesome girlfriend. At one point, Kaur expressed doubts about Ollie's ability to murder a life. In response, Ollie revealed a shocking secret that he claimed no one else knew. Ollie K. confessed to taking the life of a young girl over 11 years ago. In 2006, a girl had moved onto his street, and he became infatuated with her. He would often greet her on her way to and from school, complimenting her despite her young age. He described her as attractive and admitted to having strong desires for her. On a warm September day, Ollie K. saw an opportunity to act on his desires. He asked a neighbor girl to help him move items from his storage area, and she agreed, unaware of the danger. Once they were in the basement, he locked the door and attempted to kiss the girl, who resisted and screamed. He then struck her on the head, knocking her unconscious, and took advantage of her. Fearing she might report him to the police, Ollie K. decided to silence her permanently. He grabbed her throat and squeezed as hard as he could, feeling her pulse fade away. He described the process in detail, including the sound of her neck cracking. The girl's body remained in the basement for several days, and Ollie K. knew that if anyone had searched the area, they would have found him. However, no one suspected anything, and once the initial commotion died down, he wrapped the body in an old rug and disposed of it in a garbage bin that was taken to a landfill. Ollie's confessions were recorded by a camera in Kaur's car, and he was arrested that same evening. Unfortunately, her remains were never found because the landfill where her body was taken regularly burned its waste. The trial took 2.5 years to conclude. Ollie K. maintained his innocence, claiming he fabricated the story to gain Kaur's trust. He said his plan was to rescue Kaur's girlfriend by turning in her to the police once he received the money. Although no other evidence was found, Ollie K.'s detailed confession was enough to convince the jury of his guilt. In March 2020, nearly 14 years after Georgine's disappearance, Ollie K. was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His wife, Melik, never believed he was guilty, convinced that he had implicated himself for a noble cause. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Savannah Greywind. Savannah Greywind was born on August 9, 1995, in Burke County, North Dakota. Savannah had two brothers, Joe and Casey, and a younger sister, Kayla. Her parents, Norberta and Joe, took great pride in their children. The family resided in Fargo, North Dakota, until Savannah was 9 years old, then relocated to the Spirit Lake Reservation in 2005. Growing up on the Spirit Lake Reservation, a Native American community in eastern North Dakota, Savannah developed a deep appreciation for nature and animals, particularly horses. It was there that she met Ashton Matheny when she was 15 years old, and they have remained together ever since. When it was time for Savannah and Ashton to pursue higher education, the family moved back to Fargo. Savannah secured a job at a nursing home caring for the elderly, began studying to become a nurse, and was preparing to take her certification exam in September. At this point in her life, Savannah was a happy young woman expecting her first child. She and Ashton had found an apartment, paid a deposit, and planned to move into their own home in early September. Meanwhile, Savannah was living with her parents in a basement apartment of a 7-unit, 3-story building. Unbeknownst to her, Brooke Cruz, 38, and William Hone, 33, rented an apartment on the 3rd floor of the same building. Brooke Lynn Cruz grew up in a neighborhood in Bradenton, Sarasota, Florida. Her parents divorced when she was young, leaving Brooke and her 6 siblings to live with their mother. According to her sister, the family had a relatively comfortable life. Brooke underwent significant changes during her teenage years, transforming from a caring girl to a troubled teen. She was shuffled between foster homes, losing contact with her siblings. Brooke was imprisoned in Missouri in 2002 for falsifying documents, then arrested again for parole violation in Texas. She married Carl Cruz, a carpenter from Minnesota, at 27, had 2 more children, and worked as an administrative assistant. The marriage ended in divorce in 2009, with the father granted custody of the children. Brooke kept diaries throughout her life, recording tumultuous relationships and self-doubt. Brooke believed Carl had emotionally traumatized her through bullying and belittling. Despite this, she took steps to move forward, studying psychology and joining a dating site, where she met Andrew Murray, a chef from Australia. She relocated to Australia in late 2011. In January 2012, Brooke had an argument with her ex-husband over child custody. The situation escalated, and Brooke allegedly attacked him with a knife, leading to her arrest. She fled to Australia using false documents and married Andrew, but their 6-month marriage ended when he discovered her past. After returning to the U.S., Brooke was involved in a custody battle for her children. She then met William Hone, a 28-year-old convicted of child abuse, and fell in love with him despite his concerning past. Brooke began taking steps towards a fresh start, including finding a job in 2013. Brooke turned her hobby into a profession by studying psychology at Minnesota State University. She developed a particular interest in the psychology of serial killers and wrote a well-received paper. However, her personal life struggled due to a codependent relationship with William, marked by excessive drinking and substance abuse. Despite her outward success, Brooke's mental health deteriorated, leading to withdrawal, strained relationships at work, and a job change. Her obsession with dark human psychology exacerbated her emotional turmoil. The situation culminated on December 23, 2014, when Brooke lost custody of her children and was hospitalized for a panic attack, receiving a PTSD diagnosis. In 2015, Brooke wrote about feeling drained in her relationship with William Hone. She felt he no longer made an effort to be intimate, and their moments together were brief and unsatisfying. As time passed, Brooke became withdrawn and isolated, exacerbated by a gallbladder disease diagnosis. The situation escalated in 2016 when William brutally beat her, pleaded guilty to assault, and was ordered to stay away. The relationship had deteriorated to the point where there were no longer any healthy moments. A major issue was that Brooke had become unable to have children following an abortion in 2011. Despite this, her partner William continually pressured her to have a child. In an attempt to keep him from leaving, Brooke lied about being pregnant in early 2017, even going so far as to email him a fake ultrasound picture and a photo of a positive pregnancy test. To further convince William, Brooke found a recording of a random baby's heartbeat online and presented it as the heartbeat of their unborn child. However, by August 2017, it became clear that Brooke was not pregnant. William, having already announced the pregnancy to those around him, was unwilling to admit the truth and instead demanded that Brooke produce a child. With her medical knowledge, Brooke began compiling a list of items needed to induce labor, driven by her desire to appease William's demands. On a Saturday afternoon in August, Brooke visited Savannah at her downstairs apartment and offered her $20 to model a dress Brooke was supposedly making. Savannah agreed and, before heading upstairs to Brooke's apartment, ordered a pizza, expecting to eat it when she returned home an hour later. She had to drive her younger brother to work later that day. However, Savannah failed to return on time. Her brother went to Brooke's apartment around 2:30 p.m. and heard the sound of a sewing machine, but no one answered the door. A few minutes later, Savannah's father, Joe, also visited Brooke's apartment and knocked on the door. Brooke shouted that they were still working on the dress and that Savannah was trying it on, which was why she couldn't answer the door. As Savannah's mother, Norberta, returned home, she drove her son to work herself. She found the pizza untouched and tried to contact Savannah by text, but received no response. Norberta then visited Brooke's apartment, looking for her daughter. She noticed that Savannah's shoes, purse, car keys, and belongings were still in the apartment. Given Savannah's pregnancy and related discomfort, it was unlikely she would go for a walk. Norberta called Ashton, hoping he might have picked up Savannah, but he said he hadn't heard from her either. Later that day, the police searched Brooke and William's apartment, as it was Savannah's last known location. The landlord allowed them in and did not obstruct their search. However, since they didn't have a warrant, the police did not search closets or behind closed doors. The police department explained to the family that Savannah was an adult and capable of making her own decisions without informing her family. With no evidence of a crime having occurred in or near the home, investigators concluded that Savannah had left voluntarily. The family was upset by the police department's indifferent attitude towards the case. The police conducted 2 more searches of the apartment but found nothing. However, William would later admit that during one of the searches, he hid the baby in a suitcase and Savannah's body in a dresser with the shelves removed. 2 days after the murder, they disposed of the dresser containing Savannah's body by dumping it into the river from a bridge. On August 23, 2017, William's co-workers informed the police that he had mentioned having a baby at home. That same day, neighbors of the apartment building reported hearing a baby crying from apartment number 5 and immediately contacted the police. With this new information, the officers obtained a warrant and returned to the apartment for a more thorough search, during which they found a live newborn baby girl. Brooke revealed that Savannah herself had secretly given her the baby just 2 days after Savannah's disappearance. According to Brooke, Savannah had previously expressed that she did not want the baby. In fact, Savannah had visited Brooke earlier to ask how she could induce labor on her own. Then, in the early hours of the morning 2 days later, Savannah showed up at Brooke's doorstep with the baby and handed him over. Savannah was reported missing, and the baby was taken into temporary custody by Cass County Social Services. A DNA test later confirmed the baby's parentage, and he was reunited with his father for a short period. 8 days after her disappearance, a fisherman discovered a body wrapped in plastic on the Red River near Harwood. The body was identified as Savannah's through a tattoo on her leg that read, "Too beautiful for Earth." Subsequently, Brooke, Crew, and William were charged with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to kidnap, and providing false information to the police. They eventually began to confess to their crimes. Brooke initiated a physical altercation with Savannah, who was pregnant, by accusing her of stealing and mistreating her cat. The confrontation escalated into a physical scuffle, during which Brooke pushed Savannah, causing her to hit her head on the bathroom sink and lose consciousness. Brooke then used a knife to make a cut from hip to hip, intentionally harming Savannah and her unborn baby. Savannah repeatedly lost and regained consciousness while Brooke did this. When questioned, Brooke admitted that William was not aware of the impending plan. According to Brooke, William came home, entered the bathroom, and saw Savannah's injured body. He asked if Savannah was alive, and Brooke replied that she didn't know. William then left the bathroom briefly and returned with a rope, which he used to strangle Savannah, ensuring her death. After the murder, Brooke and William cleaned the bathroom, scrubbing the floor and walls, and hid Savannah's body in a bathroom closet. When police officers arrived at the door, Brooke attempted to remain calm and composed. The officers searched the apartment but, lacking a search warrant, were unable to thoroughly inspect the premises, including closets and dressers. As a result, they did not find Savannah's body. The perpetrator stated that the child was lying under a blanket on their bed, next to William, during the searches that day. The child was calm and didn't cry, which is why they weren't discovered. However, by the third inspection on August 20th, the body had been moved and hidden in a dresser. Meanwhile, the infant was concealed in a suitcase. On the early morning of August 21st, the dresser was carried down the stairs, loaded into a Jeep Cherokee, and driven to a river, where it was disposed of. William denied participating in the crime but admitted to hiding the newborn baby girl and providing false information to law enforcement to cover up the crime. Brooke and William were set a $2 million bail, which William found unreasonable and unrealistic. Brooke Crew received a life sentence without parole. During the trial, William's involvement in the crime was not proven. However, Brooke's cellmate, Jennifer Robinson, testified against Brooke. According to Jennifer, Brooke claimed to have strangled Savannah with a rope after learning about Savannah's affair with William and suspecting that Savannah's child might be William's. On September 28, 2018, a jury acquitted William of conspiracy to commit murder. Nevertheless, on October 30, 2018, William was sentenced to life in prison for kidnapping, having pleaded guilty to the charge. The following spring, in May 2019, William appealed to the Supreme Court. After a sentencing review trial on October 7, 2019, Judge Olin stated that despite the Supreme Court's dissent, he would still impose the harshest possible sentence, which was 20 years in prison. Considering that William had already spent 775 days behind bars, he will have to serve more than 7 additional years of his 20-year sentence. Norberta believes her daughter Savannah's disappearance wasn't taken seriously because she's Native American. This sparked Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp to introduce Savannah's Law, signed in October 2020, to address violence against Native American women by improving collaboration between authorities. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nicole Peets. Nicole Peets was born on February 26, 1973, in King County, Washington. Her parents, who later divorced while Nicole was still in school, had her as their only child together. During her high school years, Nicole was a lively and sociable individual who participated in sports and had a charming personality. She had many friends and enjoyed trips to the countryside, with Lake Sammamish, located east of Seattle, being her favorite vacation spot. She spent her summer vacations there every year. After high school, Nicole attended Western Washington College, where she studied public relations. Alongside her studies, she continued to engage in sports and maintained an excellent physical shape. She decided to turn her passion for sports into a career and landed a job as a trainer at a local sports club. There, she quickly earned the respect of her colleagues and gained a loyal client base who regularly attended her group classes. At the same time, Nicole pursued higher education in management and eventually secured a job at a major mobile communications company. Outwardly, Nicole appeared to be a friendly and sociable person who was always willing to help others. However, few people realized that she was hiding a great deal of pain and misery behind this facade. As a teenager, Nicole struggled with addiction after her parents got divorced. This event was traumatic for her fragile and still developing psyche, leading her to rebel and seek solace in bad company and alcohol. Unfortunately, this led to a severe addiction that lasted for several years and had a devastating impact on Nicole's physical and mental health. Her mother, Gail, was often away from home due to her demanding job as a flight attendant and didn't notice the warning signs. Nicole lived with her elderly grandmother, who also didn't initially realize that her granddaughter was regularly consuming alcohol. By the time the truth came to light, the damage had already been done. Fortunately, Nicole's mother was there to support her. Gail not only arranged for Nicole to receive therapy but also attended AA meetings with her, helping her to open up and overcome her addiction. By that time, Gail had remarried, and her new partner, Rod, was very supportive of Nicole. He treated her like his own daughter and believed she could overcome her addiction. Nicole took therapy seriously, attending every session, and soon overcame her addiction. However, the effects of alcohol on her health were significant. Nicole developed severe pancreas problems, requiring surgery. More devastatingly, her early alcohol abuse damaged her reproductive system, rendering her unable to have children. After overcoming her addiction in the mid-1990s, Nicole met her future husband, David, at her new job at a sports club. David, a regular at the club, was a tall, handsome young man who was diligent about his fitness routine. He was immediately drawn to Nicole, and she, too, noticed the attractive young man and became interested. Although David was 4 years younger than Nicole, the age difference did not bother them. The relationship between Nicole and David gradually developed into a romantic one, which lasted almost 8 years before they got married in 2002. Their intimate wedding ceremony in Hawaii was attended only by their closest friends and family. After exchanging their vows, they moved to a quiet town called Linwood in Washington State, where they bought a home and began their new life together. Nicole was known for being sociable, friendly, and had a talent for building relationships. She quickly formed close bonds with the neighbors and had a passion for animals, with multiple dogs being part of the family. Because unable to have children of her own, she directed her maternal instincts towards her pets. David and Nicole were viewed as the epitome of a happy married couple, with a seemingly perfect relationship that brought them joy. One of Nicole's many hobbies was cooking, and she excelled at it. She delighted her husband and impressed guests with her culinary skills, taking pleasure in sharing meals and company with those she loved. Tragedy struck when Nicole disappeared on the eve of her 33rd birthday in 2006. Nicole failed to report to work and was unreachable by her family throughout the day. Her mother, Gail, tried to contact her but was unsuccessful, prompting her to alert David, Nicole's husband, to see if he knew what was going on. However, David had also been unable to reach Nicole. When questioned, David revealed that he and Nicole had argued the previous day, and when she didn't answer her phone the next day, he assumed she was still upset. He waited until evening to attempt to apologize, only to realize Nicole was still missing. It wasn't until the evening of the second day, when Nicole still hadn't contacted her family and her phone was still unreachable, that the police decided to launch a search. They began by investigating the last known location where Nicole was seen, her home with David. An investigation of the room where Nicole Peets was last seen found no signs of evidence of kidnapping. The absence of her personal car suggested that she might have simply left on her own. The family turned to social media to spread the word and ask for help in finding their daughter. They also immediately flew to Linwood, where they started their own search efforts. They put up posters with her picture and spoke to people who knew her, hoping someone might have information about her whereabouts. The police searched for Nicole and her car, trying to determine the route she took on the day she disappeared. Tragically, the worst fears were confirmed a few days later when a jogger discovered a young woman's body in a local park area. The jogger had taken an unusual route that morning. It was there that he stumbled upon something suspicious in the shrubbery, which turned out to be a brutally mutilated, naked body. The police were immediately notified, and forensic experts suggested that the crime was violent due to the presence of severe blunt force trauma and the lack of clothing. The autopsy revealed extensive bruising, abrasions, and blunt force injuries, indicating that the victim had been severely beaten before her death. The cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation, and it appeared that the killer had used their bare hands. Police initially believed the body they found was that of Nicole Peets, a young woman who had gone missing several days earlier and had been the subject of a citywide search. Her identity was confirmed by her family as Nicole. When Nicole's mother, Gail, saw her daughter's body at the morgue, she was overcome with grief and needed medical attention. Her husband, Rod, was also devastated, but his reaction seemed a bit unusual to some. He didn't seem truly distraught and his emotions seemed forced. However, at that time no one paid much attention to this, because everyone coped with the tragedy in their own way. Police believed the missing car was the primary target of the attack and would hold key evidence. They released a description of the gray Volkswagen Polo to the media, asking for tips. Weeks later, a security guard found the car in a parking lot on the outskirts of the city, noticing it had been parked there for an extended period. The police took the car for a thorough examination, hoping to find evidence and clues that would lead them to the perpetrator and help reconstruct the crime scene. However, their search yielded nothing. The only fingerprints and DNA found in the car belonged to Nicole and her husband, who occasionally drove the vehicle. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the investigators were reluctant to return the car to David. In addition, the victim's lack of clothes raised questions. The numerous injuries suggested a rage-driven attack, possibly a personal vendetta. However, Nicole was known for her kind nature and had no known enemies. The investigation into this complex case was on the verge of going cold, with no new leads or directions to pursue after nearly a year. The lack of witnesses and surveillance cameras in the parking lot where the car was abandoned made it difficult to gather evidence. However, one peculiar detail stood out. The driver's seat was positioned in a way that suggested the person driving the car was significantly taller and larger than the victim. The police obtained footage from the gas station security cameras, but the contents remained unclear. Frustrated by the lack of progress and the fact that the killer was still at large, Nicole's parents took matters into their own hands. They hired a private investigator to gather information and verify their suspicions, and offered a $10,000 reward to anyone who could provide useful information about the case. David, the husband of the victim, initially showed interest in the investigation, but his enthusiasm waned after 6 months. He eventually remarried, having a child with his new wife. This news was devastating for Gail, the victim's mother, as her daughter had been unable to have children, and David had often criticized her for this. Gail repeatedly suggested that David might be the culprit, but many people believed Gail was motivated by resentment. The police seemed to dismiss this theory altogether. However, 6 years after the crime, David was taken into custody as the prime suspect. One unusual circumstance was a gas station security footage that captured a man using Nicole credit card. The footage appeared to show a man resembling David, but he wore a head covering and dark glasses, making a positive identification impossible. Although this recording was not definitive proof, it was still added to the case file. Another discrepancy was the missing wedding ring, which Nicole never removed from her finger. Initially, investigators believed the killer might have taken it, but they found the ring in a box on the dressing table in Nicole's home. During the examination of Nicole's body, experts found a dental mouth guard in her mouth. This device was specifically designed to prevent teeth grinding, a condition known as bruxism, which Nicole experienced during sleep. The mouth guard had been prescribed to her shortly before her death due to her nervousness, which caused involuntary muscle spasms in her jaw. These spasms had led to the erosion of her tooth enamel and chipping of her teeth. The investigation concluded that Nicole was likely killed in her own bed while she was still asleep. This theory was supported by the fact that she was not wearing any clothes and her body was clean, with no signs of a struggle. Additionally, Nicole's face was free of makeup. The mouth guard found at the scene was not a significant factor, as Nicole had only recently started using it. Moreover, forensic experts analyzed the driver's seat in the car and found that the last person to sit behind the wheel had the same physical characteristics as David, Nicole's husband. The car only had fingerprints belonging to David and Nicole, suggesting that no one else had been in the vehicle. A crucial discovery was made possible by advances in technology. The killer had attempted to mislead the investigation by using Nicole's phone in various parts of the city. However, at the same locations and times, David's phone was also active, revealing a suspicious coincidence. Furthermore, it was discovered that David had a motive for the crime, and the seemingly perfect family was actually facing a severe crisis. Nicole was juggling multiple responsibilities, studying, working 2 jobs, and supporting others struggling with addiction. Meanwhile, her husband led a carefree life, unable to hold down a job and spending most of his time in bars and clubs. He would often use Nicole's earnings to fund his nightlife, including affairs with other women. Nicole tried to intervene in her husband's addiction, suggesting AA meetings, but he dismissed her concerns. The situation worsened as David's infidelity was revealed. After Nicole's sudden and mysterious death, David hastily filed for a large insurance payout and began a new relationship. It was later discovered that David had been having an affair with a woman named Jane for several months prior to Nicole's death. While Nicole was working or studying, David would often meet Jane at bars and clubs. Just before Nicole's birthday, David brought Jane to their home, where Nicole unexpectedly walked in on them. This led to a heated argument between Nicole and David. Nicole confided in her mother about the incident just days before she mysteriously vanished. Gail had her suspicions about her son-in-law from the start, but the police claimed they didn't have enough evidence to arrest him. As a result, the case was closed, and the family was left in the dark about the investigation. Over time, they lost hope that the person responsible would be held accountable. After his wife's death, David received a significant insurance payout, which he spent on lavish gifts for his mistress, Jane. Gail believed that Jane might have been involved in the crime, but she was only questioned as a witness due to lack of evidence. In 2013, David went to court, still denying any involvement in his wife's death. His lawyers initially argued that the evidence against him was circumstantial and not conclusive. However, as the prosecution presented more incriminating evidence, the defense shifted their strategy. They portrayed David as a victim, suggesting that his wife, Nicole, had become unbearable to live with due to her addiction to pain pills and drinking. The claims that Nicole was unstable were unfounded and disputed by everyone who knew her. Even if she had lost control, that would not have justified David's brutal murder of his wife. Ultimately, David's guilt was proven beyond a doubt, and he received the maximum sentence allowed by state law. David was sentenced to 18 years in prison, but he will be eligible for parole in 2025 after serving 2/3 of his sentence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Stephanie Scott. Stephanie Scott was a 26-year-old kind and intelligent young woman with a passion for education, much like her father, Robert. As a teacher, she enjoyed teaching English and drama at Leeton High School, a job that gave her a great sense of pride and fulfillment. She was known for her enthusiasm, love for learning, and beautiful smile. Stephanie and Aaron's friendship, formed in their youth, blossomed into romance as they entered adulthood. They began dating in 2012 and, after several years of building a life together, decided to take the next step and get married. As the big day, April 11, 2015, was just around the corner, the wedding preparations were well underway. With everything set and almost complete, from catering and decor to travel plans, all they needed to finalize was a dress rehearsal for their special day, dance lessons, and romantic honeymoon arrangements. In early April, Aaron invited Stephanie to a party out of town, but she declined, opting to stay behind and complete some deadline tasks, including preparing lesson plans for her upcoming absence. On Easter Sunday, April 5, 2015, Stephanie went to her school in Leeton, New South Wales, to drop off some homework with a substitute teacher. She parked her car on the street and met a colleague who lived nearby. Together, they opened the school gates and went inside. After locking the gates behind them, Stephanie went to the English department office, where she sent a confirmation email to a bus company about transportation for her wedding guests. After working for a couple more hours, Stephanie felt relieved that she had completed all her tasks. She left the administrative building and headed towards the gates. Meanwhile, Aaron was expecting Stephanie to be away for a few hours, but as the evening approached, he began to worry because he hadn't heard from her. On April 5th, she didn't reply to his messages. When he returned home after 7 p.m., he found that Stephanie was still not there, and her car was missing from the street. At first, Aaron tried to reassure himself that Stephanie might be feeling overwhelmed by the upcoming wedding and her responsibilities as a teacher, and that she just needed some time to herself. Aaron became increasingly concerned as hours passed. As his worry grew, he sent her another text in the morning, then called her family. After Stephanie's disappearance exceeded 24 hours, Aaron reported her missing at the Leeton police station. The police investigation revealed her car was also missing, leading them to speculate she may have been in an accident or stranded while driving away from Leeton High School. To assist in the search, helicopters were deployed and officers were sent to the school. The police investigation was hindered by the limited number of people at the school on Easter Sunday, but this also helped rule out hundreds of suspects. According to the report, Stephanie had deactivated and reactivated the classroom alarm system between 1:30 p.m. and 1:38 p.m. Unfortunately, this was the only concrete detail the police could gather. Attempts to track Stephanie's phone were unsuccessful, as it was turned off. Her bank accounts and social media showed no activity after Saturday, April 4th. A witness who was near Leeton High School on Easter Sunday reported hearing unusual noises around 2 p.m., including rustling and dragging sounds. At the time, the witness saw Stephanie's car parked under a covered walkway, but didn't think much of it. However, the car was later found to be missing. A school employee who was questioned by detectives reported an unusual conversation he had with one of the school's cleaners the day after Stephanie's disappearance. The employee asked the cleaner when he last saw Stephanie, and the cleaner replied that he hadn't seen her on the day she went missing. When questioned about the possibility of Stephanie running away due to wedding stress, Vincent Stanford, the 24-year-old cleaner, responded with a nervous laugh. The witness who observed this interaction also noticed that Vincent had scratches on his face. As a result, the police decided to investigate further and asked Vincent for more information. During the brief conversation with detectives, Vincent explained that he had stopped by the school to empty the trash cans, despite not being scheduled to work that day. He claimed he was in a hurry to buy groceries and only stayed for a short time. Vincent stated that he did not see Stephanie during his visit. He also reported leaving the school around 3 p.m. to go to his usual store. The police investigation took a significant turn when they discovered that the store Vincent claimed to have visited on the specified date was actually closed. This raised suspicions about Vincent's alibi, and investigators decided to question him further. A search of Vincent's home, with his mother's consent, led to the discovery of a key set matching the description of Stephanie Scott's keys. The search of Vincent's home and belongings yielded additional evidence, including several MDF panels in the back seat of his car, which appeared to be stained with blood. Police also noticed tire tracks in front of the house that didn't match Vincent's vehicle. A used condom was found on the ground near the house, with its wrapper discovered in Vincent's bedroom. When questioned about his whereabouts on the day of the murder, Vincent said he was out taking photos. He pointed to a camera in his car as proof, but this explanation only added to the suspicion surrounding him. Detectives obtained permission from Vincent to view the camera. When they turned it on, they saw a disturbing photo of a charred woman's corpse in a wooded area. Vincent attempted to downplay the image, claiming it was a still from a movie he had filmed that he thought was humorous. However, the police quickly realized that the photo was, in fact, a crime scene image of Stephanie Scott. Vincent Stanford, a 24-year-old cleaner at Leon High School, was immediately taken into custody. A search of Vincent's phone and laptop uncovered disturbing photos, including images of young girls and women he had been stalking. A new witness came forward on April 17th, reporting that they saw a car near a canal on Easter Sunday at around 4 p.m. The witness described a man getting out of the car and throwing something that looked like a laptop into the water before driving away. The police retrieved the laptop from the canal and confirmed that it belonged to Stephanie. Meanwhile, divers searched the New South Wales River area for her body. As the search continued, police thoroughly searched fields and vineyards near where Stephanie's car was found earlier in the week, as well as the canal where the laptop was discovered. In a surprising turn of events, Vincent, who was already in custody, requested to speak with the police. He provided detailed information about the crime, including the location of Stephanie's body. According to Vincent, on the day of the incident, Stephanie was working on a computer in the upstairs teacher's room with her door open. Vincent claimed that he was cleaning the area and needed to take some bins upstairs, which is when he encountered Stephanie. Vincent told detectives that he acted on a sudden urge to kill Stephanie by retrieving a kit containing handcuffs, Viagra, a knife, and cleaning supplies from his home. He had also researched violent crimes online. Upon returning, he found Stephanie preparing to leave and, as she walked by, she smiled and wished him a happy Easter. Vincent then grabbed her and dragged her into a storage room. When questioned about the scratches on his face, Vincent attributed them to Stephanie's microphone and her fingernails as she defended herself. He described grabbing her from behind, covering her mouth and wrapping his arm around her waist, before dragging her to the storage room. Once inside, he slammed the door shut, threw her to the ground, and punched her repeatedly. Vincent stabbed Stephanie to death, motivated by a twisted pleasure in the act rather than hatred. He acknowledged a history of violent thoughts and suspected underlying psychological issues. Afterwards, he calmly returned home to eat and drink, leaving her body in the storage room. Vincent returned to the school and put Stephanie's body in the trunk of her car. He then drove the car to his home and parked it on the street. The next day, Easter Monday, Vincent drove the car to a national park. There, he removed Stephanie's body from the trunk and left it on the ground. He observed that her face was severely bruised and swollen, with a large bruise under her eye. Vincent covered the body with branches and doused it with gasoline. He then used a match to set the body on fire and discarded the match. For a short time, Vincent stayed at the scene, taking several photos of Stephanie's body with his camera. He waited for a few minutes to ensure the fire was burning steadily before leaving. Afterward, he abandoned Stephanie's car on a remote country road and walked back to town. Vincent denied brutally treating Stephanie, despite detectives knowing otherwise. He faced additional charges of severe harm and physical injury. Questioned about photos of the woman partially undressed, Vincent claimed he often removed her clothes, leaving her bra, which he kept as a souvenir. However, Vincent had actually sent the wedding and graduation rings to his twin brother, Marcus, in Adelaide. Marcus sold the stolen items at a jewelry store and destroyed Stephanie's driver's license after taking a photo of it. A 24-year-old man, identified as Marcus, was arrested at his home in the Adelaide Hills at 7 a.m. Marcus worked on a flower farm and was described by colleagues as quiet and reserved, rarely interacting with them outside of work. During the trial, Marcus Stanford was unrepresented by a lawyer. When the judge asked if there were any reasons he should not be sent to Leeton, Marcus responded in a strong Dutch accent that he had never been to Leeton and saw no reason to go. The search for Stephanie eventually came to a tragic end. While Vincent was still confessing to the crime, the police had already discovered Stephanie's body just one day before her scheduled wedding date. A badly burned female body was found in a national park, approximately 60 miles from Leeton Middle School. A thorough investigation revealed that Stephanie had suffered a brutal attack, receiving 40 blows to the head, which ultimately led to her death. She had also been stabbed in the neck before her body was discarded and set on fire. Photographs found on Vincent's phone were identified as being of Stephanie, leaving no doubt about his guilt. Both Vincent and his brother Marcus were brought to trial. Initially, Vincent denied any involvement in the crime. Vincent Stanford was deemed a danger to society after undergoing psychological tests, which indicated he was a potential serial killer. He showed a disturbing lack of emotions and empathy, often reacting to serious situations with laughter and indifference. Further investigation into his past revealed several alarming incidents. Vincent was born in Australia, but his family relocated to the Netherlands when he was 3 years old. They later returned to New South Wales when he was 7. As a child, Vincent exhibited concerning behavior, including fantasizing about committing murder at the age of 12 and nearly strangling his teacher. His classmates described him as a psychopath, and he was eventually sent to a behavioral correction school due to his violent and disobedient behavior. Vincent would sneak into the women's restroom to secretly observe female students during lunch breaks. His phone contained 2,000 photos of a young girl and a diary documenting his observations, including following her home and recording her schedule. One entry read, "She's home alone at 15:40. Enough time to abduct." The investigation into Stephanie Scott's murder took a surprising turn when her killer's twin brother, Marcus Stanford, was found to be involved. A search of the Stanford home uncovered evidence, including Stephanie's blood on a knife and her bra. Marcus was sentenced to 15 months in prison for selling Stephanie's stolen jewelry and aiding his brother. After his release in October 2016, the Leeton community expressed outrage and made it clear Marcus was not welcome. A petition with over 60 signatures called for an appeal of the court's decision. Marcus briefly returned to Leeton before leaving the area, and his current whereabouts are unknown. Marcus has expressed genuine remorse for his past actions and has acknowledged that his behavior was reckless and regrettable. Since his release, he has made it clear that he intends to avoid trouble and move forward with his life. However, he also wants to maintain his distance from his twin brother, Vincent, and has no interest in rekindling their relationship. Vincent has been sentenced to life in prison for murder and 15 years for aggravated sexual assault, with both sentences effective as of April 8, 2015.